Good afternoon. We will now call this work session for February 28th, 2023 to order, and I will start by reading our Who Are We statement. We are the Polk County Leadership Governance Team. If we were to pick one phrase to define us, it would be student-centered, because when we come together to work, we lean on our diverse backgrounds and experiences to ensure that our decisions are focused on providing a high-quality education for all students. The four most important things to our governance team are operating with integrity, respecting our students, staff, families, and each other, establishing a culture where our stakeholders feel valued, supported, and have opportunities for personal and professional growth, and supporting an approach of continuous improvement to ensure student outcomes. Collectively, we need to work on behalf of the children we serve and find avenues of agreement so that we can govern the district in an effective manner. There is no acceptable alternative. We will always collaborate in a respectful manner in order to enhance opportunities for each student and staff member. We will not disparage others. Our students will thrive because we will remain committed to supporting the whole child. We hope to engage and empower our students and stakeholders to create a community of lifelong learners. And with that, I will turn it over to Superintendent Hyde.
Ma'am, good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board, members of the community and staff. Thank you for your presence here today. I'd like to begin by asking you to understand Ms. Fields will not be joining us today. Unfortunately, she had a member of her close family pass away, and she's attending that funeral, but she did ask that we extend a courtesy to our stakeholders and explain why she was not present today. And I do know that Mr. Sharpless is running a few minutes behind. He'll be here during workshop, as will Ms. Cunningham. Mr. Sharpless, unfortunately, there was a student at his college that got into a serious car accident last night and is in serious but critical condition, so they held a prayer vigil back at his campus. So he's en route back from that event, so he should be joining us momentarily. But I wanted to explain to the community why some of our members are not present with us here today, and to ask them to please keep them in their thoughts and prayers moving forward. First up for this afternoon is the Lakeland Rotary Club. Again, we're beginning with two of our community-based partners, and so I'd like to ask Nate Durham, past president for Lakeland Rotary Club, to please come forward and deliver his presentation to the board.
There we go. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me here today. My name is Nate Dunham, and I am the immediate past president of the Lakeland Rotary Club, also a proud member of Class 1 of Inside Polk County Public Schools. So thank you for your time today. I'm going to wow you with my PowerPoint skills here. There we go. Like many programs lately, Know and Grow was created as a reaction to the pandemic. As students abruptly shifted to distance learning, it was quickly observed that there was a digital divide that existed in our community. Many parents lacked the technical skills and, more importantly, access to technology that our students use on a daily basis. Know and Grow started as a partnership between Polk County Public Schools and Polk Vision to address this digital divide. It was made possible using a food grant from No Kid Hungry. Several things happened during a Know and Grow event. First, students and parents are invited to eat a healthy, catered dinner, and when they leave at the end of the night, they leave with groceries that include vegetables, fruit, and a protein. The kids are then separated from the parents to do their own activities, focusing on healthy eating and exercise. And then finally, parents are left to begin their training with instruction from the Polk County Public School InTech team. Parents learn everything from very basics of navigating an iPad to internet and social media safety to a deep dive into focus and Schoology. Know and Grow typically takes place over 3 consecutive evenings, providing approximately 5 hours of hands-on training with devices. The first 2 schools to pilot Know and Grow were Crystal Lake Elementary and Inwood Elementary. For every night the parents showed up, they were entered into a drawing to win a refurbished computer. Typically, only one family left with a device, and sometimes there was no device to be given out. I think it's also important to point out there was only one instructor to teach up to 20 families. That's a tough task, and I'll speak more about that in a minute. I wanted to start with the history of Know and Grow because I wanted to be clear that this was not my idea, this was not Rotary's idea. The folks that started Know and Grow, they deserve all the credit. They saw a need in the community and began implementing solutions right away. As I entered my year of being president of the Lakeland Rotary Club and as a parent of children in the school system, I quickly became aware of the need to get devices into families that could not afford them. Remember, this was prior to one-to-one devices at school. I personally knew kids that were writing papers and turning in assignments on their smartphones. And those were the kids lucky enough to have a smartphone and internet connectivity. Many families were sharing devices at this time. Know and Grow aligned with my goals for Rotary, and rather than recreate the wheel, we just wanted to pump up the tires a little bit more. The infrastructure was already in place. So how is our partnership different than traditional Know and Grow sessions, which still exist today? We have a large club, nearly 180 members. We have the ability to leverage both our volunteer base and our fundraising abilities. Our motto, as many of you have probably heard, is service above self. And these are not just words, they are a call to action. We are present with the families as volunteers. We sit with the parents during instruction, and we act as an advocate for them. We are not there to teach the course. You already have great people that do that. Most of our volunteers know very little about the subject matter being taught, but they can read body language and see when someone is struggling or needs a little more time to catch on. This is different than traditional Know and Grow sessions, where parents do not have one-on-one engagement. This means questions aren't being asked. Information is not retained, because in some cases it was never actually learned. Not because they don't want to learn, but many are hesitant to ask questions for a variety of reasons. We see that in every session of Know and Grow. One-on-one advocacy is the key to success. Secondly, if a parent attends every night of training, they will leave with a new iPad donated by the Lakeland Rotary Club. These are the exact same iPads being used by their children. Our goal is to empower parents so they can be actively involved in their child's education, not a spectator being left behind. Our club decided to adopt 3 schools for this project: Crystal Lake Elementary, Highland City Elementary, and Philip O'Brien Elementary. Whoa. We have completed 9 Know and Grow courses with more than 70 families earning a new iPad. Because of our fundraising efforts, we were also able to provide each school with a gift of $7,500 last year. In addition to supporting Know and Grow, we have added an additional goal of improving literacy rates, specifically 3rd grade reading scores in each of these schools. Know and Grow was just the catalyst to get our club involved more deeply with these schools. So many times, we in the community hear about schools needing help, but that's a very generic statement. We don't know what to do with that. Know and Grow is very specific. We know the purpose, we know the volunteers needed, and we know the funds that need to be raised to carry out the goal. I believe these are the criteria businesses and organizations want to know before getting involved. The ask needs to be very specific. All right, well, let's not go. The future of Know and Grow. The truth is, I don't know what the future is. I can tell you that the program has challenges in front of it. For starters, the No Kid Hungry grant is set to expire. Feeding up to 20 families for multiple nights is not cheap. Finding additional trainers and compensating them accordingly, that's a hurdle as well. Thank you. All that said, there are some positive takeaways and opportunities. First, the bones of the program, they're strong. The in-tech instructors do an amazing job and should be recognized for what they do. The parents show up, and I can assure you, it's much harder for them to show up than it is for us. They're skipping an extra shift at work. They're finding babysitters, all these things that we don't have to worry about every day. But they make it happen because they want better for their families. I really believe this program can be scaled and delivered to other organizations that are looking for a proven concept with positive outcomes. And I'd like to finish just with a quick story about a lady named Lydia. She was at our last Know and Grow at Highland City. She's a single mother, 3 kids. We got the chance to chat with her a little bit because her car broke down on the first night, and we were sitting with her waiting for a tow truck to show up. And we were talking about Know and Grow and what she hoped to gain out of it. And she told us that her goal was to pursue her GED. And so that's what we're trying to do. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to any questions you might have.
I have Ms. Miller first.
Realized that was on, but I'm glad it was. Thanks for presenting today. I hope you inspire other clubs to do the same. We joked earlier that I'm a Kiwanian and you're Rotarian, and that's okay. And we have a lot of great people in this community who want to know how to help, and this is one way that we can reach these families through service hours with our club. So thanks for coming here today. I think your information will really help others.
Thank you.
Ms. Wyatt.
Thank you. And I so clearly remember being on that original planning committee for Know and Grow back in the middle of the pandemic when we were all Zooming and still wearing masks at all of the first events. But what a huge blessing it's been for Lakeland Rotary to step up and assist in those clubs. And really, even before we went to one-to-one devices, making sure that those families didn't just know how to use the technology, but that they could access it, specifically that the parents could access it. One of the things that I love about Know and Grow is that they make sure that every student is signed up for the parent portal, because most of the parents coming in didn't even know they could check their kids' grades online or see what was going on in class. But that mentorship piece is just so crucial. So I just want to say thank you for all that you guys have done to step up and assist.
So interesting, real quick about the logging in. We had a parent that had never logged in to see the grades before. They just got the report card at the end of that grading period. And she logged in and she saw that her kid had 3 A's and 2 B's. She wanted to go find out why he had 2 B's. And that's what we're trying to do, is give power back to the parents.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. There's no further questions or comments. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, Madam Chair, members of the board, we have Sarah Powers, the founder and president of Top Buttons, an organization that works to build on building self-worth inside and out.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. This is not intimidating at all. I love working with young people, so talking to adults is part of it, and I'm glad to share with you today. But Top Buttons is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we exist to build self-worth inside and out in young women. We provide clothing resources and life skills education and hair and makeup. We really have found that there's so many resources and services out there for young women to help prepare them with education and to meet their nutrition needs, kids pack, feeding. There's just so many different things, but we want to help them put it all together so that when they sit down in front of their employer, they really know how to present their best self. We work with a lot of organizations that are trying to help these young people find jobs. And like my mom works for the Polk County School Board with students with disabilities and with the Project Search. And so she's helping place these students in places of employment, in meaningful employment opportunities. And a lot of times her students won't show up for the job interview after they've worked super hard. And the reason is they didn't have the interview outfit and they didn't feel prepared to sit in that session, even though they'd done all the hard work up until that point. So Top Buttons, like I said, is a faith-based 501c3. So that is incorporated in our messaging. We want these young people to know that they were created with a purpose and that we believe they have a calling on their life. And we want them to know that they are not alone and that we can really help prepare them get to that next step in life to present their best self to the world. I did start Top Buttons. We had our 10-year anniversary last year, so this has been in the works in our community for a little while now. It's definitely a spiritual journey. My background is in social work. My degree is in human services. I love youth ministry. I thought maybe I would grow out of it when I had kids of my own, but I just haven't. And I'm thankful that it's not just me. I mean, maybe I came up with the original idea from the Lord a long time ago, but we have so many individuals that are involved in our organization, more than 60 volunteers every year. We have a staff and group of individuals that are passionate about the purpose, and a lot of times, like me, growing up with a troubled childhood and divorce and, hardship, certainly not as hard as many individuals that we're serving, but I remember what it was like in high school when I felt lost, confused about my identity, really needing support and broken. And those are such pivotal years in these kids' life. And so having that mentor, having somebody that wants to come alongside and encourage, but not just tell you what you need to do, also provide the resources so that you can get there. And that's what we're looking to do. I remember one of our first serve days was with PACE. PACE has been an organization that we've partnered with since day one. And so I would take the message of contextual modesty and how to present yourself on the job and at school, why it's important to consider the messages that you're sending with what you're wearing and your body language and social media. So I took the message with, I always love the college students because they like to take pictures of themselves anyway, and they like fashion. So like FCA, right, uses sports to connect and equip and inspire. Top Buttons uses fashion to do the same. So we've got these young people volunteering, and we went to PACE, and we did a presentation on how to dress on the job and where to find clothes that are appropriate depending on the place that you're interviewing. And one young woman came up to me and said, "Mrs. Powers, I would love to dress more modest if I had the money to go out and buy new clothes every time I changed my weight." And, these young women and young men, but we target and work with young women only, but they are fluctuating with so much in their body during these years, and it is hard. I do have the money to go out, thankfully, and buy a new pair of jeans for my daughter if she needs it. And these girls are being, put in a box because people think they want to send that message of immodesty. Well, maybe they don't, but our culture does teach young women that in order to get ahead, they've got to put themselves out there provocatively, inappropriately, and with shock value. Well, we want to encourage them on how to get healthy attention for the right reasons. And certainly one girl at a time, partnering with organizations who are also encouraging them in this area, we believe that we can and we are making an impact in these young women's lives. We know the stats. We know young women are struggling with their body image, with their self-esteem, with their mental health. I hate bringing up COVID, but so many have lost vision for their life, and they're struggling because they were in a dark hole and couldn't communicate with the rest of the world. And there's such an emphasis on social media, and these images that they're comparing themselves to are just not real, and they have this concept of who they need to be. And so we want to counter that and provide that positive resource for them. So what do we do at Top Buttons? Our Wearing Confidence program, we provide boutique sessions. We are set up as thrift stores that I did not start to sell, dear God. If I would have had any idea that was part of the process, I probably never would have started. But we have upscale thrift stores, and the community members donate clothes, and they're really nice clothes. We don't want second best. We want the best for these girls. And so the community can come and shop and help fund our full-time charitable efforts, but organizations enroll with us, and all of their girls get the resources for free, both the life skills education and the clothing resources. So boutique sessions include large groups of girls come in, and they can get personal styling services, free clothes, undergarments. We have our beauty bar, so salons are in every location, so we can do haircuts, color correction. We add weave. We do what these girls need that is helping them present their best self. The educational piece, we offer 2 large conference-style sessions in addition to smaller sessions, and we bring in local experts that teach on things involving mental health, positive body image, healthy self-esteem. Contextual modesty is always a part of what we're teaching with young women. So we do those events, and we have over 150 in attendance. One of the things I haven't touched on is how we validate the need, and I kind of shared that organizations enroll with us, not individuals. So any organization that is serving young women between 11 and 25 can enroll with us, and they bring the girls to us, whether it's a large group of girls or an individual, one more child. After someone is rescued from sex trafficking, we're one of the first places that they call because they have no garments that are appropriate to wear even at the house that they're being housed in at the time, let alone clothing for church or a job or a luncheon or that kind of thing, just everyday attire. Undergarments deodorants are obviously new. We don't provide those used to the girls, so we have a partnership with Soma Intimates, which is a national undergarment company based in Fort Myers, and we buy the bras and they donate them to us, but we buy them at cost, and we obviously aren't selling those at the thrift store. Those are given to the girls only. We also have our job readiness and capsule collection delivery project. It's a mobile boutique. During COVID, that was our big project, was how can we get resources to individuals? And personal hygiene products. Maybe they weren't needing clothes for the job during COVID, but they needed personal hygiene products like feminine products, soap, deodorant, those types of things. So the mobile boutique takes the job clothing attire that we have donated from the community, and we also buy it. Young women have extended sizing needs and different shapes and sizes, so even donated thrift clothes, which is often dry clean only, doesn't make sense for them. So we buy machine washable blazers and dresses and closed-toed shoes and provide the thrift clothing so they can choose from those things and take it to them if they can't come to us. So the mobile boutique is beautiful, has a dressing room and air condition, and we love being able to take the resources on the road because, as you know, transportation is one of the greatest challenges in serving those that have needs and that are underprivileged. Here's our current list of partnerships for 2022, and we have room for more. We don't turn down programs that want to enroll with us, but we serve churches that are in lower income areas. We have worked with the Polk County School Board on several occasions and have done presentations at Bartow High School. I love working with the teenagers, so anytime we can do it, we will make ourselves available. Winter Haven, we just opened right before COVID, so we're still in the trench work. We're getting onto the other side finally, so we're networking with more programs in Winter Haven and continuing to build in Bartow as well. Abigail came to us many years ago at one of our first sessions. She's a part of Girls Inc., and she was one of those that had the confidence in her from the beginning, right? And so we were able to play a small part in her journey, and we are just honored that we were able to do that. Came from very rough home situation, had to overcome so many challenges, came to every educational event that we put on, came to me. I found her at my church one day. I was like, talk to me about your dreams, and shared them with me. She ended up being a volunteer at Top Buttons and then on staff at Top Buttons, and now she's too busy for us because she is recording at SCU and doing great things locally. And now we have her speaking at our educational events to the other young women we serve. And that's a big part of our message. It's okay to receive help. I was a single mom in my 20s. I know what it's like to need help, and thank God I had people around me who were there to give help. And that's what we want to offer to you, help now, so that you will be able to give back in the future and be a big part of what makes our community great. So with all that said, I would love to answer questions if you have any on Top Buttons and how we can better partner with the school board or how we can serve and offer our resources to let others know what we're doing in our community.
Thank you. I don't have a question. I'm just a big fan. So if you have not visited, not necessarily the guys, but females, if you have not visited the Top Buttons in Winter Haven, it is great. I have not been to all of the other locations, but the Winter Haven one is incredible. But just all that you do to support our young ladies as they're growing and finding themselves, and we appreciate it. And I would love to see more of our schools partner with you all, because we do have a few schools that you have partnerships with currently, correct?
Yes. Yeah, New Beginnings High School. I mean, Denison Middle School. There are a handful that we're partnering with. I know we don't serve the guys, so that can be a challenge. Willing to work with a group that would serve the guys and maybe even fundraise to help get money for the guys to also have resources as well. But currently, it's just the girls that we're serving.
But thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Ms. Miller?
Hi, Sarah. Good to see you again. Good to see you. Being at your fundraiser and seeing the community support, I thought was really great. So are you connected to our Hearth program and DJJ programs when we have girls that come out of both of those?
We are.
Okay. And if a school is listening and wants to be a part or partner with or a faith-based community or a service community, do they contact you specifically, or do you have an outreach person?
We do. Emily Trevette, and it's emily@topbuttons.org, and I can make sure that that information is available to anyone. But she's our program director, so she facilitates the enrollment process and all the organization of volunteers to help serve the girls to provide that full scope of what we offer.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Dr. Allen?
Yeah, I was just going to say in general that the men up here probably need some nice fashion help. So if you can offer some advice to us, that would be great. No, we really love your mission and vision. Within our household, we talk about your organization quite a bit. So I know you're in Lakeland, you're in Bartow, Winter Haven. So appreciate the work that you're doing. Thanks for sharing your story and a little bit about the great work. I was just going to note our strategic plan, and one of our goals is basically to engage family and community. And it says to expand and ensure alignment between the district strategic plan and our community government agencies, entities, nonprofit groups, and business initiatives. So I just thank you for the work that you're doing and helping us just really build those partnerships within our community. Thank you.
Thank you. It takes a village, right? We
Yeah.
need each other. So we're on board with you guys, and thank you for being on board with us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, good, right?
Yep, thank you. Next item before the board is the Polk State Lakeland Gateway to High School renewal update. This time I'd like to bring Ms. Candy Amato forward.
Good morning, afternoon rather. So this is just an update to the presentation that I did back in December for the renewal for Polk State Gateway. There were some questions that were left lingering, so I wanted to clarify any additional information that you may have. I reached out to the school who was present at the December meeting, and they are also present today. I like to make sure that it is recognized that they are committed and involved in the process. In regards to some of the questions that were asked about the students that they serve with their 6 priorities that they've identified in their original application as well as in their current renewal document. They currently sit with this year at about 61% of the students enrolled meet one or more of the priority criteria that has been outlined in their application. But it is noted that these are self-reported, and it is very difficult for us to track that in focus. There's no caveat or marker to provide that documentation. So the school has volunteered, and I give them kudos for this, to provide the district with that data annually to ensure that they are still serving the population of students that are outlined in the application. And they also provided some wraparound services, a little more detail in the services that they do provide, as well as their recruitment plan that at the time was futuristic, but it is currently ongoing, and how they plan to market to the students that they hope to serve. And with that, I think that pretty much answered any of, one more question. They do, as of now, they would like to, they will no longer, they are not going to pursue adding the 10th grade at this time, but they would like to leave that door open for future conversation.
Ms. Amato, I'm waiting to see if anybody signs up to ask a question. It's okay. Ms. Wyatt.
Sorry, there's too many buttons over here. And I just want to confirm, this is a 5-year renewal, correct? They were asking for 10. Okay. But that is at the discretion of, and the review team was, if I don't have their information, but the review team was, they're 10. Yeah, it was 10. Okay. It just looks like in the application, it still says in year 6, adding 10th grade. Which the application hasn't been up. That got it. Okay, perfect. This was just to provide an update to the data that was requested. Perfect. About the students that they serve. Okay. Again, that was my one concern. Really, was adding earlier if the requirements are not being maintained as those to make sure we're getting the students that really need the wraparound services the most. So, but if that is the case, then I appreciate you guys coming again and listening to our feedback. But thank you.
There are no further questions or comments. Madam Chair, next I will invite Steve Cochran, Senior Director for Workforce Education, and Angela Clark, Principal at Lewis Community High School, who have an impressive item to share with you. You know, as a school district, we continue to look for opportunities to innovate and create new and unique opportunities for our students, not only in areas where workforce development is expanding, but also in areas of high interest for our students and our administrators. So we were very fortunate. I was very fortunate to be included in a tour to visit this program and to have some initial conversations. So I'm pleased it's coming forward before the board. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Cochran and Angela.
Good afternoon. I'm going to be very brief. I just want to say that what most impressed me about this idea and this presentation is it is organic. It grew from the school. This is a total school project. They've really brought into it, and I'm going to let Ms. Clark do the introductions from here.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Cochran. Thank you, Board and Superintendent Hyde, for having us here today. I'm really excited to share our program with you. If I could get to it. They're doing it. Oh, they're doing it for us? Yeah. All right. I've got a couple of people that I want to introduce to you. Obviously, as Mr. Cochran shared with you, this is, kind of just to develop and further develop the academies that we already have going at Ridge Community High School. We're very blessed to have some nationally accredited academies already, and we are looking to, further develop those. And one of the things that we have seen up in the northeast part of the county and the need of our students is really that service-minded leadership. So we're looking to incorporate the Rosen Institute of Hospitality over in as part of UCF, and looking at the ways that they develop, their leadership, and their graduates to really incorporate that as an umbrella over all of our academies. And so I brought with me today a couple of people that can more eloquently share, a little bit about the program. We're blessed to have Elizabeth Espinoza, who is one of our very valued teachers that came to Ridge Community High School this year. Professor Weiwei from the Rosen Institute of Hospitality, and then our head of program, Karen Johnson, that works with me daily on our CTE programs. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Espinoza, who will go over in more detail, and we'll kind of tag team back and forth through the presentation.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark. It is very much an honor to be able to work with you and all of our instructors at Ridge Community High School. To the board, thank you for your time. Mr. Hyde, Mr. Green, Mr. Cochran, thank you for your support and working with us over the course of these past months to prepare for you today a proposal and prototype of which we plan to implement at Ridge Community High School. Myself, I am not an educator by trade. I am actually a hospitality professional, and 20 years of my career has been dedicated to developing and working in the world's leading luxury hospitality brands, including the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Shanghai, Pudong, the JW Marriott Marquis in Dubai. But my career started here in Central Florida as a college program graduate at Walt Disney World. So to be back home here in Polk County and to have the opportunity to share my experience, my resources, my network with the exceptional administrators and educators that we have here at Ridge Community High School is my great honor. Now, Rosen College of Hospitality Management, for many of us, we think, oh, are we developing people to work in hotels and restaurants? Yes and no. We know that tourism and hospitality is the leading employer here in Central Florida and across the state. But what we see at Ridge Community High School is an opportunity to develop the leaders that will drive the innovation, the entrepreneurship, as well as the soft skills that are going to create a competitive advantage for our students, our district, and hopefully a prototype that can be spread across the state of Florida. Now, we have an opportunity together with the Rosen College of Hospitality Management, of which we've had multiple meetings and alignments with regards to developing and understanding how can we create a prototype that can be duplicated across the district, potentially even the state. And what we said is that here at Ridge Community, we have already existing 17 career preparatory programs. And what we'd like to do and what we're planning to do starting from fall of this year is to organize our academies to really drive home this idea of wall-to-wall career academies under a service leadership umbrella. Not just talking about hospitality, we're talking about all of the components that hospitality helps companies and industries to be competitive in this very technological world. Now, our program includes an exploratory freshman year for all of our incoming freshmen starting in fall of this coming year. By their sophomore year, our students will have selected a career path, and I'll show this to you in just a moment. That would be their pathway for the remainder of their 3 years in high school, with a capstone industry project in their senior year. Now that will be together in partnership with our partners at the Rosen College of Hospitality Management, but also too, this program is not just about developing curriculum and opportunities for students, but for educators as well. Our teachers are going to be working very closely with the Rosen College professors as well as the dean and the program that they are establishing there to be able to open up to other educators in Polk County. What you see here on the slide is all of our existing 17 career programs that we currently offer. And what we have done is we tried to model what a hospitality framework would look like within a luxury hotel or really in any service customer-facing industry, including medical, which is a huge component to what we are already doing at Ridge Community High School. Our divisions and our students will select one of these 5 divisions by their sophomore year. They will explore them in their freshman year, but they will select one, and they'll be cohorted together over the course of their 4 years at our high school, where they will then have a capstone project under guest experience, which includes culinary, vet assisting, medical, and world languages. Property management is what we would refer to in the hospitality industry as how do we maintain the quality of the buildings, the facilities, the cleanliness, as well as executing large-scale events, as well as landscaping. Our agri-technology, construction, applied engineering will fall under that division. Our JROTC and civics programs will fall under leadership. How are we developing leaders that have a diplomatic mindset, something that we would need in a global framework that we teach in hospitality, and how can we implement that for our students and develop civic leaders to contribute to Polk County? Our business operations includes what we would consider human resources components. How do we develop talent? How do we develop teachers? How do we develop business mindset that is ready for a global community? And lastly, entertainment. We are in the hub of entertainment and tourism and industry, and how do we continue to drive performing arts, visual arts, physical education, as well as graphic design to be able to develop those skill sets to immediately get students and educators connected to the industries that are driving the economy here in Central Florida. Now, this book that you see here, I will let Mrs. Clark to explain. Yes?
Yeah, actually, the book came about before Ms. Espinoza walked into our doors, and we kind of went through this. My administration team we're looking for a book study that incorporated the values that we already had in place there at Ridge Community High School, and we came across this book that exemplified exactly what a wall-to-wall academy high school would look like, and it talks about the high rigor that goes along with that, the relationships that teachers build with students, and then that obviously the school builds with the community. It also talks about a capstone project. So why put off your senior year, all right, and coast by until you go to college or into the industry, all right, but really make something of it. So what kind of certifications are we building, in our students and allowing them to earn that capstone project and really work towards something that they are going to be used in the workforce. So the book really exemplifies and gives solid examples from schools across the country that have already implemented this and kind of build a framework for what it would look like. And so it kind of blossomed into that idea. And then when Ms. Espinoza came in and we started having conversations then with the Rosen Institute of Hospitality, it just kind of fit together. And we were like, is it coincidence, or is this really supposed to be happening? And so we started then talking with Mr. Cochran and his team, and then leading up to Superintendent Hyde and the visit, all right, to Rosen.
Thank you. What we have decided to do is we're going to use this book as a framework for our school with proven case studies. This program is going to be slightly different in the fact that we will add the hospitality component to the core curriculum that we already have established for Polk County. Now, with that comes an immediate launch starting from fall. Remember, we're not making much changes except organizing our existing academies to fall within our divisions. And as we go along, we're going to be building the pathways around each of the different grade levels. But with this ambitious plan comes ambitious goals. Because that is the rigor that we are expecting from our students at Ridge Community High School. 95% graduation rate. We want, starting from this freshman class, to be on that pathway to achieve graduation. 90% job and or college placement. By partnering with Rosen College, we have articulation agreements that include the Polk State College agreements that would allow for dual enrollment and ability for our students to earn college credit. We are striving for 3.5 GPA for our academy students, those that are going through this program that will do their full completion of 4 years. We are looking to reduce our attrition, to keep that at 5% or less, and 95% of our students going through this wall-to-wall academy will achieve industry certifications.
And if I can add on that, I mean, those of you who know Ridge, all right, know that we're not quite there yet. And these are goals. And ultimately, it's not going to be a one-year turnaround. This is a process that, and Elizabeth will go on to, describe a little bit, but it's something that we're working towards. All right, so that these are things that Ridge Community High School students are capable of, our teachers are capable of, and that's what we want to foster, through this concept.
What makes our project slightly different is that when we have this idea, there also needs to be an instance of being able to measure results. And by doing this, by partnering with the Rosen College of Hospitality Management, Dr. Wei is here today, we are going to implement the research component to support what it is that we are doing. Now, what we are doing and what research that has already been done thus far is what we call perceived career readiness and willingness. Really how industry and how employers view the readiness of talent coming out of the university program. We are now taking it to the high school level. How willing and ready are high school graduates to go into career placement and or further academic study? This program and the support that Rosen College of Hospitality Management will be providing to us includes support for curriculum development when it comes to the exploratory year for the hospitality component, advising our teachers and administrators for implementing this process. Absolutely career engagement across the board with all of the industry partners that Rosen College of Hospitality Management brings to the table, as well as a hands-on learning component, which is the capstone year, the senior year capstone project. And this project will also include focus groups because majority of our parents of the students in our high school work in the service industry. And this is not just about developing opportunities for our students, but we're talking about elevating a community. And through this program, we hope that we can show after 4 to 5 years the results of our research, the efficacy of our program, and ultimately provide a framework that can be rolled out across our district and the state. Timeline is presented here. Again, we're starting in the fall of this year. That's our freshman year. And every subsequent year after that, we will continue to develop the curriculum that is needed for sophomore, junior, and senior capstone projects. And here we are. Our next steps, as they were presented about 2 weeks ago with our last meeting with Mr. Hyde, is to be able to share this with all of you to see what we are doing here at Ridge Community High School. In addition to that, we'll be working on finalizing the mutual agreements between Rosen and Polk County Public Schools. We are also going to be creating a committee, a project implementation committee between the professorship of Rosen College as well as our leadership at Ridge Community High School. We are going to be adding this exploratory course to our master schedule for 2023-2024. And what we are hoping that will be finalized is the ability to obtain the unit for Academy Coach to serve as a liaison for this project and to implement everything that we've presented here today. Thank you.
Mr. Sharpless?
Thank you. Thank you.
Doesn't take long to study me to realize I'm a big proponent of career technical education. Also a big subscriber to servant leadership theory. So I'm loving the fact that you guys are going to be focusing on that.
Thank you.
Creating servant leaders in a variety of different industries.
It seems like to me this freshman exploratory course is kind of like going back to the wheel in middle school a little bit. Kind of going back and seeing different areas and where you might want to find a home in high school. That's really important for our students.
Yes.
For them to find a home.
It is, and so many times we found in the last several years when we were really trying to get our students to stay on a specific track, that they are still wanting to, move in and about between medical and engineering and construction, or no, I want some fine arts over here. Well, of course, all right, you're a high school student. And so what we're trying to, offer in that 9th grade year, and then as it builds in middle schools, we buy into that, in terms of that and bring that along the way. We're hoping that we can, narrow the focus a little bit for our high school students.
Absolutely, and I'm doing my dissertation right now on, and one thing I'm measuring is career decision self-efficacy.
Yeah.
High school students.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm really looking forward to finding the research out from
Wonderful.
this project to see, how this has affected career decisions, especially.
And Dr. Way is, for those of you that don't know, Rosen College is the #1 hospitality program in the country, if not even worldwide. Dr. Way is the #2 most cited researcher in hospitality, and she has a breadth of research and documentation that she's already doing from a human resources component and perspective within our industry. Yeah, you're welcome.
Ms. Wyatt.
My first question is, Angela, where did you find
It is the
and where can we find more of her?
It is the funniest story. It was an early dismissal day before Thanksgiving kind of area. September. It was that early? Gosh, the year. All right. And the secretaries from the front office, called back to me and said, Ms. Clark, you have a Kelly sub that would like to meet with you. I said, sure, why not? Bring her on back. And in walked Elizabeth. And so, fortunately, she's done an outstanding job in the classroom. She's already gotten certified to be an English teacher for us. So she has done an outstanding job for Ridge Community High School. And then, the contacts that she's brought with her and this idea that she's just willing to take on and run with, as well as many other programs at the school, yes, she was a blessing to find.
That is awesome. So for other principals out there listening, if a Kelly sub wants to have a conversation with you,
Never
you
underestimate
make
your
the time.
Never underestimate your Kelly subs. No, really, and this is what I've been telling Mrs. Johnson and Mrs. Clark, who've given me the opportunity to be at the school, is that I've had my career. I've lived in many countries. I speak many languages, but my home is here. And the best that we can do is to give back to our communities, and I hope that what we're doing at Ridge Community can also serve as an example for other career transitioners to contribute their skills and expertise to bettering our future.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We're excited to have you back in Polk County.
Good to be home.
And I just want to say, whoever's idea it was to put medical under guest experience, kudos to you, because I cannot wait to be served by a doctor that comes out of your academy thinking that medical is a guest experience.
Yes,
it is just, that is awesome.
Rosen College's curriculum is all about now medical care and the importance of hospitality, service mindset in medical care, geriatric care, and senior living.
That is awesome. Well, kudos to you all for, this is a great plan, and I can't wait to see it come to fruition.
Thank you. Thank you for your support.
Ms. Miller.
Thanks. I just want to say what a great fit. We talk about having academies where students not studying the population before we add academies. This is a perfect fit for this school. And I want to say once again what a great job Ridge does in inclusion of every student. So going wall-to-wall academy, you'll have opportunities in this umbrella of all of these services to provide something for everyone, no matter their ability or their interest. So I think this is going to be great, and I can't wait to share the results of this.
Thank you.
Mr. Nolte.
This is great, unbelievable, because I know that a lot of our students would love to be in this program. I hope we can spread it out, because I know that it's so good for the students to do what they want to do and be in a program they want to be in, rather than sitting in a classroom and go through the normal, what used to be normal, as far as I'm concerned, and then they go to college, and then they get out of college and they live with their grandparents or their parents for the next 30 years because they can't find a job. And by this is just unbelievable. And I saw physical education, which was caught my eye because I was a teacher for a few years, 36. I think it's really wise to, besides educating the mind, to keep your body in shape so that you don't keel over with a heart attack at age 40. But this is tremendous. I can't say, we definitely need to get this spread out so that when the kids graduate in 4 years, rather than try to figure out what they're going to do next, so know by their sophomore year what they're going to do. They're going to get a position in a great field to get into. So kudos, you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Sorry, Dr. Allen.
Great, thank you.
Hang on, Dr. Allen. I saw you. I mistakenly cleared you.
Cleared me.
There's a lot of buttons up here.
We've lost control of the mics.
How's that?
Mhm.
Want to try it again?
Dr. Allen, try now.
Oh, gotcha.
See if it's working, Dr. Allen.
No go. I'll speak loud enough. Yeah. I was just going to say, Mr. Cochran, thanks for just allowing the ground to be fertile, right? And then obviously we're hearing so much innovation and purpose and passion around your ideas. So thank you. Thanks for our guests to be here as well, and the great work that UCF is doing. Go Knights for sure. And I would say in general, we're concerned, right? We're concerned with our 9th through 12th career education. So this brings this sense of cohesion and vision. And it's a solid plan. So really appreciate the ideas here. I don't know if you can just summarize. I mean, you've got that whole text, you got all the experience, but when you say wall to wall, what does that mean? And how different is it from your current model currently?
For us, I mean, there's still right now, if you were to come to Ridge Community High School, you still have, juniors and seniors that have never been a part of an academy. And ultimately, that's what we want to, work to solve. Because ultimately, there's a lot of things tied to those certifications. Not only is it career opportunities for our kids, but it's acceleration points for our school, and things of that nature. So, ultimately, we were looking for a plan, all right, to get everybody involved into those academies. And so, bringing back that 9th grade year, looking at the different academies that we offer, and then going that, kind of goes along with the framework that was talked about in tomorrow's classroom. And then in our works with, Ms. Espinoza and Dr. Way, then, it just kind of blossomed from there into that. So ultimately, going wall to wall would mean that as a 9th grader coming in to Ridge Community High School, you would get to explore, if you chose, all right, what academy path you would choose to go on. If you already know coming in, because we don't want to limit, those students that want to come in and be a first-year medical academy student or a first-year construction student. So they're still going to have those opportunities because they already know that path. But what we want by the sophomore year is them to have that path, and so that they know their kind of graduation path, so to speak, in high school, similar to what they would their freshman year in college, or this is what I need in order to get my bachelor's degree. So that's kind of what we're trying to build. So everybody will be involved, whether you're in PE, in fine arts, in our ESE programs, whatever. You're going to have a place where you're going to fit into one of our academy structures at Ridge Community High School. So that's pretty much wall to wall.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing.
No problem. Thank you.
There are no further questions or comments. Madam Chair, at this point, I am going to ask that we take a recess since the microphones are not functioning. IT has indicated that they need to do a hard reboot. So we'll go ahead and recess for 10 minutes to see if that allows them enough time to address this issue.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And we will reconvene our February 28th work session. And I will turn it back over to Superintendent Hyde.
Madam Chair, thank you for your patience. Thank you for our citizens and for staff while they rebooted the system. Should we have another issue, we may have to take another temporary break, but I think that we've resolved it for the remainder of this evening's meetings. At this time, I'd like to bring up Ms. Candy Amato again. We are going to be discussing the proposed charter school application for Patterson Preparatory Academy, and I believe there's a presentation to go along with it.
Good afternoon. It is the spring, so charter school is popping. So lots of activities coming up. So I do have in the audience Devon Dillon Hughes, who's going to present her application that she submitted to us on February 1st.
Or thereabout, called Patterson Preparatory Academy.
Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for having me. And I'd like to present the Charter School Patterson Preparatory Academy. And I'll start with the mission statement. It's to provide students with a culturally enriched high school environment equipped with innovative and post-secondary opportunities that will propel them towards their future endeavors. So just a brief introduction. We're looking to enroll and stay small at about 275 students. And as the mission statement stated, it will be a high school. The targeted population are at-risk students, but we like to call them at-promise students in the lower economic bracket or community of Lakeland and Polk County. So the academic design was carefully structured with the students in mind. So we intend to maintain high academic rigor, and we believe that the Polk County's McGraw-Hill selection of curriculum provides that rigor as well as the scaffolding that teachers are able to do and provide students in class in real time. They're able to differentiate their instruction. As well, we want to keep to the blended learning model where teachers are able to actually accommodate the flipped classroom, do a Socratic seminar if they're so choose to, as well as provide, again, the differentiated model, as well as do any type of small groups, selections, and things like that during class time. We also have intricately designed a schedule where we provide flex scheduling for students in order to meet their mental health as well as academic needs. So students will come in and the student success coach will provide them with individual success plans in order to have them focus on their future goals. So we feel like this approach was needed for the demographic in which we are attracting because we want to provide a small, wholesome, and safe environment for our students. And along with this, we want to build an academy. So our priority is for 9th grade students in order to establish and form and forge a culture in which we see fit to ensure that the students will understand that every day they are to understand that their academics are in the forefront. As well, we think that having the united classes, single-sex classes, will provide them with a unique learning opportunity. So we intend to do that, again, in order to forge this community and establish the high academic and rigor amongst the students. We also intend to provide them with exposure to various fields, like social media, content creating, exposure to entrepreneurship, exposure still to law enforcement and armed forces, just providing them with various outlets in order for them to really forge a path that they see fit for their post-secondary pursuits. The location that we anticipate this school to be is in the north region of Lakeland, and this region tends to have a higher population of African American students and the families that reside in this area. So we intend and anticipate that the demographic and population of students will be reflective of its community. So far we have garnered support and community support from the Central Florida Business Diversity Council, the NAACP Lakeland branch, retired principals, small businesses within the Lakeland community, as well as different educators in Polk County and beyond. Our governance board structure will be comprised of a president, a vice president, and sitting members. And we definitely want to ensure, and we are vigorously soliciting board members, a board member that has extensive expertise in accounting and finances. And I like to close out with the late Coretta Scott King's quote, "The greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate action of its members." And I'd now like to open up the floor to answer any questions. Again, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I read your information. It's quite interesting, and I really kind of like, having seen it done before, single-sex classrooms. So as I was reading through it, my question is, did I understand it correctly that it will be all girls? Or are you just, I thought it was, is it an all-girls academy?
It will be all girls and all boys, but it will be single sex and homogeneous. I'm going to, excuse me for mispronouncing that, but in the classroom setting. So we will be accepting both male and female.
I thought from the way it was written in your backup proposal that it was going to be all girls.
Oh,
But,
no.
okay, wonderful.
But I wouldn't mind it, but.
I know, I understand. We need to help all of our youth, so that's great.
Absolutely.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Miller?
Hi, thanks for presenting today. Not everyone comes and presents, so I think that's great that you're here to answer questions. So being Northside Lakeland myself, and is this something, we have an at-risk private institution in that area that caters 5th to 8th grade. So are you looking to pull students from that school, the private, like Academy Prep, or do you think that your populations will come from our middle schools?
I would hope that some students would come from the middle schools. It is my intention to have it come from various middle schools.
And are you going to provide, can you tell us a little bit about, and I know this is the beginning and then we have a lot of information coming to us. Can you tell us a little bit about the students and how they'll be supported? For someone who works a lot with students with disabilities, are you going to provide a continuum of services for students who need supports, or how will that be for those children?
We will make sure that students that need any type of support will have that support. Any student that is enrolled, of course, we can't turn anyone away. So if a student comes in with an IEP, a 504 plan, or some type of additional services that they need, we will ensure and make certain that there's someone there that can provide those services, albeit a para, but hopefully a full-time employed staff teacher.
Because I know sometimes with finances, that's where it's hard. We have to align the dollars with the students, especially the ones that need those supports. And a lot of our at-risk kids may not be identified by the time they get to you. So that was just one area. But I appreciate you coming today. And I think this, having more opportunities for students is very important.
Thank you.
There are no further questions or comments at this time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Superintendent Hyde, can we just have quickly Ms. Amato remind us of the process from between now and when we see this again?
Certainly.
Sorry. I couldn't get to my button quick enough. I just know we have a couple new board members. So if you could just tell the process from today to when it comes to us again.
So what'll happen, so they based on our policy, they do get to present for the 5 minutes, which we did today. We will then conduct a capacity interview where we take the application and it is basically dissected and thoroughly gone through, and questions are asked to the applicant. We have the charter review team also submit questions. We have an outside consultant who reviews and provides questions. So that capacity interview is recorded. We will provide you with that link, and those questions provide the applicant an opportunity to provide more detailed information or to clarify questions that we may have or concerns that we may have. At that point, the review team dives in again. We discuss the answers from the capacity interview. We then make a recommendation based on the findings the charter review team does. Vicki Mace, who has presented in the past, she's our outside consultant. She will come and share all of the findings from her due diligence, as well as report what the charter review team found. She will share with you what the recommendation of the charter review team is. Then the superintendent will make a recommendation, and then you all will vote. And we do have potentially another application dropping on March 1st. So this will happen it'll kind of overlap itself. So.
And just for the board, for new members of the board who may not be aware, some of the areas that they primarily focus on obviously is finance, staffing, statutory requirements, And so that's really, we do this not to prevent charter schools, but to make sure that charter schools, if approved, are sustainable over a period of time.
There's a template application and a template rubric that's all provided by the state, so it is a very consistent and thorough process from one application, from one district to the next.
But they look at everything from, and you've heard this before about concerns, we look at the instructional staffing model, we look at their financial model, we look at what the feasibility of their site location, those types of things to make sure that we can ensure that they can have the best opportunity to be successful, especially if this board is, and my office is going to make a recommendation for approval. So just want to make sure we covered that one more time. Thanks, Candy.
Thank you.
I'd like to bring Brian Warren and Jenna Short forward. The next item before the board are the staffing updates, recruitment and retention, recruitment and engagement, and a revised job description, B number 1. And it appears that it's not Ms. Short, it appears that it's our very own Chief of Staff, Mr. Pitts. I see that, sir.
Good afternoon. We're here to summarize for you what is before you as changes to some job descriptions and positions inside of recruitment engagement. To be brief, these are positions that are funded through Title II. The one job description is an upgrade from a coordinator to the senior coordinator of recruitment. Previously, it was just a coordinator of recruitment position, and it's being upgraded to senior coordinator. That job description will carry with it the prerequisite requirements of having a bachelor's, a master's preferred, and 3 or more years with recruiting in a private sector, and then classroom experience preferred. The next job description is name change only, as we have taken that position from a teacher engagement leader to senior coordinator of engagement, strategically working to have these positions play off each other in the following ways. I'll begin by the prerequisites, again, that were unchanged for this position, which is a bachelor's, master's preferred, 5 or more years of teaching experience, and 2 or more of leading recruitment activities. The position of the senior coordinator of recruitment will focus on revisions of business and process improvement. It will be different than the senior coordinator of engagement position in the fact it will collaborate with business and community and district stakeholders, and will review quarterly and annual metrics and revise. And then we'll move into the engagement, which will be focused more in instructional and teacher-based. It will review as well business and process improvement, but it will analyze data to support a retention and feedback from teachers and reinforce positive school cultures, working individually with those schools and those teachers that are out there. They will also oversee all drafting and editing of any communications and presentations of promotional materials that go out to those audiences as well. So that was an update and a summary to those job description changes that were in that item, and I believe they're also replicated in Mr. Pitt's staffing update section as well.
I apologize. One moment, Ms. Cunningham. Ms. Miller was first. Ms. Miller?
Sorry, that was from before.
Thank you. Ms. Cunningham, is this a new question, or is this from the previous item?
It was from the previous presentation. I was just going to ask, because Ms. Amato was up here, when are we going to discuss? I think you pulled the Language and Literacy Academy for Learning. When are we going to discuss that?
We addressed that and provided a narrative during the last workshop. That will be brought back to the board on March 28th. I provided the board with the letter from my office to that organization addressing or outlining the concerns that we have, that we hope to be able to address and bring that back for board further discussion with the school board again on March 28th.
Okay, was that with the hopes that they would do something different? Because the way it stands now, there's no way we could approve that. That was my question. Why are we delaying that? Unless there's an opportunity for them?
We're providing both them an opportunity. We were in receipt of a letter from their attorney following our last board meeting.
Right.
And so we do have an obligation to perform our due diligence.
Okay.
Subsequent to that, we were also contacted, and I have some additional things that I now need to make sure that we do our due diligence on to investigate further.
Okay.
So it's a complicated matter, and I apologize for being somewhat vague, but I'd be happy
Okay.
to discuss it later.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. That was my only question, sir.
Ma'am. Dr. Allen.
Great. A minor thing, I was just noticing how the sequential branching is going with the recruitment and then the engagement. And then noticing underneath you have the teacher recruitment coordinator position under each category. Are they functioning separately?
It'd be separately, yeah, focusing on school and in business, trying to develop those trees and also develop succession planning for feeding up to the director ultimately.
Okay, great. And then the salary, it's previously was grant funded and is currently will continue as a grant funded position. And then the salary noted, is that the total package of the salary or is it just base?
It's SG 20. I don't have the number in front of me to remember how it's quoted. We usually quote it at base and then we'll go from there.
Okay. All right.
Dr. Allen, if I could, and I appreciate a good question, actually, I just wanted to point out even further that previously this department was focused on instructional positions. Last year, the board approved for us to expand it to include our non-instructional positions because, as you know, our trades and other areas, custodial services, transportation services, have all become very difficult or hard to hire areas, and so we did balance out that team, and they're doing a very effective job right now. I keep sharing that, and I provide the board with a list of vacancies each week with a Friday update. And considering, if you have 150 to 185 instructional vacancies out of the volume that we have, considering also that we have now grown almost 7,000 students because we started out at 5,000, we're now almost 7,000 students above last year's enrollment. And so having that number, considering the number of students we've also grown, it really is a testament to the work that's being done in HR, and they continue to refine our practices. We continue to hear frustrations about the timeline it takes to hire individuals, and so we continue to find opportunities to streamline that, to move certain practices to the front end of the hiring, for example, drug testing and fingerprinting, which tend to be something that can take a considerable amount of time for applicants, and we know that if we take longer than 3 weeks or 2 weeks to process someone, we're likely to lose them to a neighboring county. So we're trying the best we can to accelerate all of our hiring practices and still meet all of the requirements stated by law.
Great, thank you.
No further questions, sir. Last time for discussion this afternoon, last item under superintendent's report. I'll ask Mr. Pitts to please come forward. He has the superintendent's report for the Polk Education Association contract language. There were several items and language items that we sought to address. So Mr. Pitts, or is it Mr. Warren?
It's going to be Mr. Warren.
Thank you. I see that.
We have conferred, and Mr. Pitts joined us, at the table through the bargaining process as well. I want to summarize for you the settlement that we have with PEA for 23-24. I'm going to kind of summarize. If you want to look through the executive summary, I'll be taking the Cliff Note version from there. And if you have additional questions with more details, I can drill into the actual TA'd elements of the article should you desire. PEA represents 8,968 employees that we represent. 6,916 of those are teachers, and 1,510 are paras, and 542 are ESP. The vote for the tentatively agreed upon language that we're going to summarize here in a moment went out. It was returned to us on February the 21st with the following ratification percentages. The teachers ratified at 93%. The paras ratified at 92% and ESP at 94%. This is a year that is unusual in the fact that you will notice before you today you have language that we have come to the table to bargain, and you don't see benefits and you don't see salary grids. This is a new innovative way for us to kind of come to the table early to get these elements pressed out while we know we're waiting for budgets to drop from Tallahassee. This allows us to get in front of contract language that we can use during our recruitment processes or otherwise. So the word that we use, this word, this year, it's a new one for me too, is it's a bifurcated process, which means that before you today is the language changes to the contract, and later you'll see another presentation come relative to health and salaries. We opted to go with this bifurcation, as I said, to help us get out in front of language that we could present to teachers before they leave, and also to help us with recruitment. But we also had, on the management side, some priorities that we wanted to get with the union on relative to unpaid leaves. And further, they had issues of discussion that they wanted to have with us relative to the maintenance of standards. So we opted to come together at the table and undergo this process. The work session item before you today is also replicated in the board meeting agenda. It is running back to back. The reason for that is in the ground rules for collective bargaining, it offers that once the unit has ratified, and they did ratify that vote for us on February 22nd, it says that at the next regularly scheduled board meeting, we come together for your consideration of what the union had ratified. A summary of what we did while we were at the table. First was under association rights and privileges. I'm not going to break this down for teacher, parent, and ESP because these walk across all three, so the summaries really are relevant to all three contracts. The language is embedded in all three. But the first is association rights and privileges. There was an element that we had previously ratified at the table that we needed to correct, and the fact that we needed language relative to providing a second officer to be on leave to work with PEA, and so we embedded that across all three of those contracts. The second element of summary is the authorities protection. This was for teachers. What we did was we tweaked the language and updated it to reflect to ensure that teachers had legal representation if they needed that when they were carrying out the functions of their job according to policy and statute. So it basically says if you're doing your job and it's within the purview and function of board policy and Florida statute, that we would assist with any legal representations within that purview. Unpaid leaves was something we came together with in collaboration. You'll notice that I think it says work group in a lot of the details. That was because we began the process at the negotiating table, then we broke out into a subgroup, and I will say that the union representatives and our management representatives came together in a room for, I'm going to say, for probably 3 or 4 hours to start with. And we totally took apart unpaid leaves and put it back together. And I think it's a much better product than what we had. To summarize what you'll see in unpaid leaves now, the provisions in the unpaid leave article will be details that are applicable to all kinds of unpaid leaves. So you don't have a specific type of leave mentioned with some details under it, another type of leave with some details under it. So we tried to consolidate those that were common and put them at the beginning of the article. And then beyond that, we broke down specific details after it so folks were very clear as to what to expect. Some of the changes that you'll see in there are as follows. One of our management concerns that we brought to the union was we have teachers and that go on leaves and they're gone for a year. They may be gone for a second year because they'll take one leave and then go out on another leave. And when that teacher is in that position number, the only way we can get a teacher in that position is to advertise it and request for somebody to come in on a limited employment agreement. Not everybody wants to work on a limited employment agreement. And so the resolution was we have tentatively agreed to the fact that for those unpaid leave positions, after a period of 12 weeks, the positions can be advertised. So the principals have latitude to post them on RHS and bring in other staff to assist with those needs in those schools. Now, what that means for the employees on the unpaid leave, they'll have a position upon return. One of the two criteria was they have to notify us 30 days in advance that they're going out so we can make the preparations at the school to be ready to have somebody in place. And second of all, they contact us 30 days before they return so we can treat them like a displaced teacher and find a home for them or a school that would be by priority closest to their home in a subject that they're certified for and go from there. So we felt like that was a great way to keep instruction and momentum going in our classrooms for our students. The other item that we worked on was professional compensation. There was a provision in underpayments where it offered that if there was an underpayment issue that we immediately wrote a check, but behind the scenes there's a process for writing checks from the school district, and we unpacked that and put language into place that we would provide those underpayment checks as prescribed by the payroll calendar. And if there is a special situation beyond that that arises, the chief of staff has the opportunity to review that timeline to provide the compensation. Maintenance of standards was the other article that we reviewed. And basically in this article, we offered that if there was a change in law, we discussed the fact that we would come together. We're tracking very closely developments of statute and changes that are being proposed in Tallahassee. And so that happens every year. It happens in Tallahassee. It can happen on the federal front. We saw it years back with No Child Left Behind that we had to come back together on. We've seen it with differentiated accountability in schools where we've had to come back together. But the language says that if there's something in the contract that is contrary to law, in this article, it provides a timeline of 10 days that we get back in a room with the union and we begin to discuss the items that are contrary to law to seek resolution through bargaining to those. So that's what the maintenance of standards summary is. The board rights, that was our drug-free workplace language. We tightened that up to offer that employees had to have a prescription and they had to be able to offer that to us within a prescribed period of time, being 24 hours. And then our contract term previously was set to expire June 30th of 25. That was extended to June 30th of 26. And we did that as an update to our 3-year agreement we had just previously done in open book. And so we came to the table this time to kind of impact bargain based on the reopeners that we had. And it allows us to have continuity to continue to expand from there. But just because we're extending to the 3-year agreement of 6/30/26, we continue to have the opportunities to impact bargain and to have reopeners with the union as we come together. That is the last part of a summary of the articles that we have tentatively agreed working in collaboration with Polk Education Association.
Mr. Sharpless.
You mentioned in a presentation that this is a new way of doing this. I was just curious if this has been done before, separating out the salaries and benefits part, since it is dependent on our funding from Tallahassee, and then all the non-salary and benefit points, ratifying that now. Is this something that is ever been done before? And then also, just curious why we do this.
First, it's never been done in Polk before.
Okay.
It has been done in other districts, and it does allow, just as I said previously, that opportunity for us to keep the language part of our negotiations going, because sometimes the language pieces can even get caught up and schedules, and we don't get things tentatively agreed upon or ratified. So it allows us to push that piece forward while waiting for the budgets that we're all tracking, and Mr. Pitts gives us updates and we continue to track that. So at such time that we get hard numbers from Tallahassee, we will be back at the table then to do that. I guess to go a step further, Mr. Sharpless, in years past, it can be, I will use the word problematic, if we have language that we're really needing to get into place and we fall apart on the numbers because of budgets or otherwise, we can go into some statutory processes that hold us up to getting things resolved maybe in the first, second semester, or even that whole school year. So this allows us the opportunity to keep those processes moving.
Thank you.
And if I may add, items like the sick leave and several examples that Mr. Warren was able to highlight today about FMLA and other types of leave were important to get resolved prior to the start of summer, so employees have that, and they have a ratified version of this, so they know what the expectations are. And I am appreciative. Since I've arrived, the board has heard me say repeatedly we needed to get to multi-year contracts so that we're not spending weeks or months at the table constantly negotiating, because that you're always starting over, it feels like. And so from our team, you know, I see the amount of time that Brian and his team put in, Mr. Pitts and others put in on a financial side, and I get to float in and out and resolve things when you have a conflict, it seems like. But at those times, quite frankly, I'd like Mr. Warren to focus on other things. I'd like to see him focus on less of the conflict and the discussion and negotiations and more on implementation. How do we best support our teachers and fill our classrooms? And so I see this as an advantage for us in the long term. Separating salaries, I think he answered it very, very well. Salaries could be delayed. We don't know what the budget's going to look like. And knowing this year that we are in the best position to address salary compression, it's going to take us longer to find a solution for that than it would normally. We're not just issuing raises this year and doing just it's not a traditional compensation conversation this year. We are, because we got to the 47,500 base requirement last year, or for this school year, we're now able to push all that new money into addressing compression for our veteran staff. So it's going to take us a little bit of time to finalize that plan. So, and I think we've been able to negotiate in good faith and in good time. We negotiated 4 contracts last year in less than 12 months, 2 with PEA and 2 with ASME. So that's quick order. We've been very quick at the table, which is a good thing, I believe. So, Ms. Cunningham.
Thank you, Superintendent Hyde. Just a few comments as I read through this. Number one is kudos to the team. We have never, ever done this quickly. I mean, yes, last year we did, all 4 sets of contracts, but this is wonderful. I really enjoyed reading through here that it was only for, the contract language, and that, the salaries and health benefits would be addressed later on, and for obvious reasons that Superintendent Hyde just explained, and so did you. So I just think it's wonderful. I'm excited because, we both have the same thing in mind, and that's taking care of the employees that take care of our kids. So we come from 2 different angles, but the bottom line is we come to the table and we're doing what's best for kids ultimately. And then additionally, I was quite impressed when both of them said, both under teacher and paraeducator, that the terms were extended a whole nother year. I mean, that's huge for time that staff spends on the bargaining table. To be able to extend this a year out to 2026, I think is commendable. I just want to say thank you. I know there's a lot of work, time and effort that goes on behind the scenes from everyone, and I just think a huge thank you to all of you for the late nights to get this done early enough, and then we'll see what the budget looks like as we move forward after the legislature meets. So thank you so much. Appreciate this. It's great.
Ms. Miller.
Hello, Mr. Warren. I just want to confirm that we did have our new staff attorney in this process, because it is new to us and new how we're doing things. And I'm glad he's joined us in the audience. But this isn't something we're doing on our own outside of having guidance from our attorneys, right?
No, ma'am. Mr. Davis joined us each step of the way from our pre-planning and reviewing our presentations as we prepared to go into bargaining. And he actually sat right to my right-hand side as we went through bargaining, and we were shoulder buddies as we went through, and furthermore, in caucus when we had matters of legality that we had to review, he was there as a resource as well.
And he was
very appreciated.
He was not hesitant to interject, and quite frankly, a lot of the language we ended up with, we give credit to both PEA and he and Brian, because it took a lot of back and forth discussion to get to contract language that most people would perceive as neutral. So we're very pleased.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Allen.
Yeah, I was just looking at 5.19 on the contract, and if you want to look at that. And I was really trying to get an explanation on the increase of, I don't know if I would say private data, but definitely an increase of data that's being collected and shared. So for example, the added contract language that requires the district to provide a birth date and telephone number. I mean, I don't mind sharing my birth date with you, and obviously our telephone numbers are public from our standpoint, but I was just curious a little bit about that. Is there a need? And I guess really the top of mind on this question is we have another piece of software coming, to us this evening, Qualtrics, and I was looking at the non-disclosure agreement that's a part of that contract and valued the language and the rigor that they put into protecting that data. So I'm just curious, how that data is handled and protected as it relates in accordance to our policies specifically.
I was going to pull the language up, but as you summarize it, I remember it very distinctly. The prior language had, I think it was like maybe 5 criteria that we provide. So what happens behind the scenes is there are reports that we generate that are ready-made, and there are other reports that are special reports where you say exactly what cells or what data sets you want. And the report that we provide information to PEA has all of the cells that are there. Those are transmitted through a secure, network. They are not. I clarified this at the bargaining table with PEA, was that this information, furthermore, we don't send it out if somebody is on a list for, do not contact or it can't be shared. So that's already screened out before it ever gets there. And then we had the conversation as to its use and otherwise. So I guess, the one thing was, it was a difficult position to say why we weren't going to provide additional information when it was already in a readily available report that we were already pulling as well. And so we tried to be collaborative, and so we didn't mind providing information because it was part of a report that we already collected. We were already providing information, making sure it was scrubbed for folks that should or shouldn't be on that list before it got there, and the assurances that it was going to be used appropriately on the other side once transmitted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess that was the question: is that data, protected? Where is it being stored? And some of those questions that sort of come up as we're looking at that language. I don't know. Then just digging deeper into the language as well. 5.18 as it relates to payroll deductions. We know that that's an issue that's at the state level right now. There's a lot of conversation around that currently as well. And I think for me, I'm the middle child, right? I'm not the youngest, I'm not the oldest. So my context in this process has been March of my first year in office, 21, going through the impasse. And then later that year in October, I believe, is when we as a board voted on the previous, the next iteration of the contract. So from a timeliness standpoint, I feel like I don't have that experiential background. So we've sort of been all over the place as we've gone through the collective bargaining. And I do like the idea. Let's simplify this. Let's extend the contracts out, maybe a 2-year period like we did last October or in 21, October of 21. So, and then obviously minimizing the work as well. But in a sense, we're adding more work by negotiating twice within a year. I don't know if I necessarily agree that it's minimizing the work. So, I just have some concerns on the timeliness of that. But specifically as it relates to 5.18, the association, I was looking at that language. I've never seen it where I just pushed in a little bit deeper on that. But it says the association agrees to provide the board with a list of additions and deletions as it relates to payroll deduction. So is this like a per year request within that? Because basically what I'm trying to find out is, does the board, and who's the board within the contract itself? Is it us as the board, or is it the district that's receiving some type of a list of individuals that are removing themselves from that payroll deduction?
It would be my opinion that when they reference board, they're referencing your entity, because
Yep.
the agreements that's before you now as to being tentatively agreed upon are now been brought to you by way of those ground rules to codify or to vote on and vote. So then the discussion of board would be you as the group. It is, I believe, an annual presentation of information that's exchanged for those that are electing, because it's not a back and forth multiple times through the year. It's once it's set up, it's in place.
Right. So I think in the contract it says whenever someone's hired, they have 30 days to either take part in that payroll deduction or remove themselves from that payroll deduction. Is that how the contract reads?
Yes, Stephanie, you want to? Ms. Yoakum.
First of all, just to clear up maybe a misconception, the article language in Teacher Article 5, and it is correlating the other two contracts for payroll deduction, is not on the vote for tonight. That's existing language that's been in there forever. And so that's not part of the ratification package that you're voting on tonight. You're only voting on the strike-throughs or the underlines. That's it. Anything else that is not underlined or stricken through, that's existing language that you're not voting on, because that is current language. To talk to Dr. Allen's point with how we currently do payroll deduction, it is not a new hire thing. People can join or drop whenever they want. We are a right-to-work state in Florida, so they can be a part of our union or they can decide not to be at any point in their career with Polk County Public Schools, and it's a 30-day process for payroll side so that they can stop or add the payroll deduction. And so they don't have a time certain when they have to decide to be a part of the union, and there's not a time certain when they decide that they don't want to be a part of the union anymore. Just like if somebody wanted to stop their 403B contribution, it's the same process. So they would just submit a drop saying to payroll saying, hey, I don't want to pay VALIC anymore, I want to pay somebody else, and then that it would be the same process. So just to clarify that.
Awesome. And then I guess while you're here as well, just because we're not a part of the process and we see the end product, right, and we get the narrative around that. So specifically, some of the additions around the association rights and privileges, I would just love to hear a little bit more narrative around that, because obviously there's been existing language in that contract. So, why the necessity for the newer language that's there?
The only two pieces that are being added to association rights are we added a more comprehensive list of the data that we already receive in our monthly data report. And so we just wanted that codified, moving forward. So that information that's being added is already information that we receive on the bargaining unit so that we can accurately and timely communicate with our bargaining unit. Because whether they're a member or a not member, we still negotiate their contracts per Chapter 447 of the Florida Constitution. And so we need that information to be able to communicate with them about stuff like this with ratification, etc. The other piece is adding a second officer, which we did last negotiation in the paid leaves. It's just when we were going through association rights, we noticed that we didn't catch it when we had ratified the last time, and so we were just updating what was reflective of what we already changed in paid leaves. So we now are allowed to duty release a second officer, which again, we pay for. So with my salary and fringe benefits, and now my secretary treasurer's salary and fringe benefits, we get a quarterly invoice from the district, and we pay back my salary, my secretary treasurer's salary, even our fringe benefits as far as workman's comp goes, our medical insurance, any FRS contributions, and so that you as an entity do not pay my salary. Our membership pays my salary for being out of the classroom, and we have that agreement in our contract through the collective bargaining agreement.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so to clarify a little bit further, Dr. Allen, if I can, so as Brian pointed out, and I want to make sure I do clarify this point because it speaks to what Ms. Yoakum just shared. We already provide them with a file that has delineated columns with titles and information. What they sought to do is make sure that in the future we would not delete a column from that because they felt that all that information was pertinent and important for their ability to communicate with these potential members or existing members, and we were in agreement. We already produced this file, and it has relative information. It's password protected. We follow all of our internal safeguards in that regard, and so
we have a
there was no issue with that.
verification similar to what the district does with data protection through the Florida Education Association with double verification with our VPN. Our server's protected just as yours is, and so the data is secure and protected just as it would be housed with Polk County Public Schools.
And at the end of the day, it potentially reduces some workload, and as we move forward, sick bank has been an honest conversation that we've had. Our obligation is to process sick bank as it relates to PEA. Mm-hmm. Our obligation is not to manage sick bank, and we need to get out of that business, quite frankly. So all the language that's contained within the collective bargaining unit is really for their membership. What we're shifting towards is basically they're going to control their own sick bank through their membership, make decisions, and they're simply going to inform us. Here are the actions we're asking you to take, and that is all we should be doing. But we are so intertwined and interjected in this that we end up making decisions about sick bank and sick leave that really should not be something that we're involved in. If someone qualifies, they qualify. And so at the end of the day, we're trying to expedite and streamline this process, because ultimately what's been happening is we're finding a lot of errors because of the timelines in which information is being submitted and are processing it. And so then an individual had hoped to have it in their last paycheck, but then it's not hitting for 2 more paychecks because we missed a deadline, because it's still going back and forth for approval. And again, as I've reassured our staff, as it relates to PEA and AFSCME, we're not managing the sick bank. We simply do the data entry. We manage sick bank for NUG members, the non-union group, and our administrators. That is our responsibility. But that's their group, their membership, their sick bank. They need to have control of that. And quite honestly, we don't need to be in the business of doing that. So.
And yeah, and just to move on from that as well, I think the Article 29, as far as the maintenance of standards, I'd just like to hear a little bit more why the additional language that's there attached to that one.
We wanted to actually have a clearer, more defined process, again, as Mr. Warren had stated, when No Child Left Behind came down, so this is federal or state law, that there is a timeline in which we come back to the table to impact bargain legislation that's been signed into law, or legislation that's signed into law that we know is coming in a later date, whether it's July 1st or October 31st or December 31st, depending on the date, that we have a time certain to come back and impact bargain that particular legislation that impacts certain provisions in the contract. And so I actually feel that this is stronger language for both parties because it gives us a clearer, more defined timeline in which to come back to the table.
And so did the previous language note 10 days after?
No, there was no timeline. So one party could drag it out, the other party could drag it out. And so really, I think that this is a better way forward so that we have a more time certain to come back to the table to talk about the impacts of legislation.
There is no reference to time whatsoever in the previous language.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It simply makes reference to that the provision shall be automatically modified. Here's where and one could argue, well, that's a timeline. It says it has to automatically happen. Except it goes on to say by mutual agreement of the parties.
Yeah.
That means you go to impasse. There is no explicit timeline in which there's a mandate to meet, to address the topic, or to even try to problem solve this. The 10 days, and I give Chad and Brian full credit for that, because the reiterations went back and forth in PEA. But we did put the 10 days in there because there's a comfort there knowing that it has to be addressed within a specified timeline. Now, clearly, we would not wait for 10 days. And there are topics that we know may come forward that we may have to modify in rapid succession. And PEA and the group have already had some initial conversations. And quite frankly, they're already exploring their own options about what other alternatives there may be. For example, salary, direct deposit for union fees. Should that change, there's already an alternative that they've remedied for their membership that will not involve the school district. Mm-hmm. They're currently piloting that process right now. And so there are things that we know may come around that we're going to have to modify. I think there's a reassurance here as well by extending it a third year that for all of our employees, and regardless of whatever happens in the near future, we do, as an employer, still have an obligation to make sure that we are supporting our employees to the greatest extent possible in every way. And so we've had that conversation, an honest conversation about all the what-ifs, and it's a difficult road to go for them in particular. But, I think the language does a good job of reinforcing what the expectation is. And quite frankly, I know some have expressed concerns with the tail end of it, that they have the right to pursue all legal action. They have that right now. There's nothing other. All it does is codify it in language. It doesn't change their options or their availability to seek legal action. But I think, quite honestly, let's just put it all out there. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I would love to keep the conversation going a bit and maybe look at that because, I don't want our district to be put at risk, and I want to feel confident and make sure that our attorneys are confident in that. But if we can look at the specifically line by line, the language, and maybe hear from our attorneys on that perspective.
Floor is theirs.
Sure, thank you. This is something that I've that has been a point of contention for me personally. The issue we're dealing here with is if you ratify this and there's any changes made in the legislature, and we know that there are some changes being discussed right now, that we now have a contract that will remain in place. There is a theory that under the Constitution impairment clause, that the contract would supersede any changes made to state law. And, you know, the choice is yours. I want to make sure you're going in with eyes wide open. But you know, once I realized that there was some, you know, it is a collaborative effort in our group that had agreed to some of the language being proposed, I got the 10 days in there to try to give some time frame for it. The 10 days does not mean there has to be an agreement within the 10 days. And I suppose it's even possible there could be no agreement if we were to go to impasse, and that could last a lot longer. In which case, according to the terms of the contract, the contract would supersede any changes made to state law. So your concern then would be whether or not, if the state were to tell us we had to comply with the changes in statute, would we go into breach of contract? Those have been my concerns. I think Wes can also speak a little bit more to this. This was just my first experience, but I want to make sure that you're well aware of those concerns since, you know, my name was brought up as someone who collaborated and agreed on this. I wanted to let you know where I came from and why I was able to get the 10 days in there, but I still have those concerns.
Those are absolutely concerns. We are aware that the governor's office has made no secret of the direction that the governor is taking with respect to the Teachers' Bill of Rights and the so-called Paycheck Protection Bill. We don't have a bill yet, so we don't have language to look at and review. We know that's coming, and when it does, we'll deal with it. The bottom line here, I think, is that you can't be put into a position where your contract violates state law. There is a, you know, at worst case with this language, it is a bit unusual, but worst case with this language, if there is a conflict, if a new statute passes that conflicts with language in the collective bargaining agreement as it exists at that time, there will be bargaining. And ultimately, if there is no resolution to that bargaining, the school board of Polk County will have the final authority to impose. So that's your ultimate protection. Is that an efficient process? No, it is not. Is it a pleasant process? No, it is not. Can it be onerous and can it be contentious? Absolutely. But that is the process that we have. And ultimately, in bargaining, the bottom line is if there's disagreement, that's the direction you have to go. So we do have that escape hatch. We do have that relief valve in the event of a conflict between a new statute and existing contract language.
Which is no different than what we currently have now.
That's correct.
And so
That's
I think
correct.
I want to keep
it
clarifying
exists,
that
it's
there's
there.
nothing in here. There's no gotchas. There's no finger pointing. There's no thumbing our noses at anyone. I think a lot of the speculation around this, quite honestly, is based off of, you know, emotion. Contractually, we have an obligation. We have a contract that we would sign with PEA. If the law changes, I can assure you that I'm taking action to address the change in the law. The board is taking action to address the change in the law. Our best solution is to go to negotiations, find an amicable solution to that issue, as we've already done, in anticipation of some of these changes. At the end of the day, if we reach impasse, we can impose, simply stated. And the PEA would have to pursue a different avenue and route from there, or FEA would. But at this point, again, the language does not create a hardship on the school district any more so than we currently have in our existing language or policy or practice. And Mr. Bridges, please contradict me if I'm wrong.
This is part of the uncomfortable coexistence between labor and management. But that is the ultimate situation. If the legislature adopts a statute that somehow contradicts or contravenes language that is then in place in the contract, we'll have an avenue to address that so that the district would not be placed in a position of violating the statute.
And our previous language did that.
Arguably.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's true no matter what.
Mhm.
Mr. Nolte.
What is the percentage of classroom teachers that are members of the union?
Our new percentage is about 56%.
50?
About 56.
56. And what's the percentage of paras?
Our new percentage, because we have some really good things that are recruiting out there right now, we are almost at 50% for paras now. And our secretaries are a little bit low, but they've jumped about 15%. We're about at 36% with them.
So 36% to secretaries?
Yep.
And what was the paras again?
About almost 50.
Almost 50. Okay.
You know, because those are different enrollment groups, do you have any projection at this time as to where your total number?
Oh, we're going to make it. Don't worry about that.
Okay.
I'm a really good organizer.
So what do you think you're going to make, percentage-wise?
Oh, we'll be at 60%.
60?
I have every confidence.
Ms. Yoakum does not lack confidence. I can tell you.
I do not. I was born with a lot of confidence. And determination, by the way.
You know, and Ms. Yoakum, since the payroll issue seems to be one that's on the forefront, and I know you and I have had several conversations, and I've already kind of touched on the topic. Would you mind sharing with the board PEA's position that you would agree to find an alternative solution for?
Yes, I mean, and actually, we are already moving, and like Mr. Hyde had said, we're already looking at pilots. So again, I'm not as concerned about the payroll deduction for our units. And so really, it's just moving, 4,500 people over, which takes some time, but again, not insurmountable.
Thank you. There are no further questions or comments. Thank you. Good discussion. Thank you, board members. At this time, I'll bring Mr. Pitts forward, or do we need a break? Okay, let's take a 10-minute break. We will reconvene at 2:56.
I mean, he got the message.
We are good.
And we will reconvene this work session for February 28th, 2023. Superintendent Hyde.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, we're moving into the budget and staffing section. As you know, this is a newer area that we added for the sole purpose of being able to address these topics. Mr. Pitts has joined. I do not see Ms. Jenkins with him, but I know Ms. Castle's here. Others are here to address any questions that you may have. I did send the board an email earlier addressing some questions or concerns that came in from a stakeholder to readily address those and clarify that issue. And I appreciate Ms. Castle's rapid response as well to help me with her assistance to that. So, Mr. Pitts, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Good afternoon, board members. Happy February 28th. And you know why February 28th is so exciting? You get paid 2 days earlier than in a typical month. Or 3 days, depending on if there's 31 days. Okay. Just wanted to point that out. So I appreciate the opportunity to bring you reorganization submissions over the next few weeks or few meetings. I think when we've done this in the past, it's very difficult to get the entire reorg in one workshop. It's a lot of information. And we've been making a lot of positive changes over the last year, and I appreciate your help in that. What we're trying to do is move our plans upward. Those of you that have been on the board longer than the others would remember that it's typically no sooner than June that we would bring the really first proposal. In many years, it was done in August. That was primarily for budgetary reasons, but it really helps if we can start advertising and having those plans in place. It just makes a little more, makes it a little bit more easier, and it makes our staff more prepared for the following school year. Our goals in staffing this year, I think our number one goal is to deal with compression. Last year, we needed about $56 million in additional revenue to move all salaries proportionately the same as we did with the lower, the beginning salaries with the $15 on the $15 minimum salary and also the $47.5 teacher salary. We need about $40 million this year to fix that compression issue, okay? I think our second goal is making sure we have the appropriate additional staff that we need. You're gonna see, I think when the efficiency committee report comes out, you're gonna see that Polk has far less administrative support than the other big districts around us. That's really coming to light. We want to address the professional technical salary schedules specifically in the mid management area and specifically senior coordinators and senior managers. Some of them are making less or right about the same as the folks that they supervise. They saw a little bit extra increase in their salary last year, but we'll need to really address that again this year. You'll have before you very soon information on a salary committee that we're bringing back that will not only address salary schedules, but also requests from staff that feel like their salary was not set at the appropriate level. Now our challenges going into this budget season. I already mentioned the $40 million for compression. We need about an extra $13 million to be solvent in our health insurance fund, solvent for next year. We're good this year, but for next year. Retirement, there's the current bill, current Senate bill would increase our retirement costs by about $3 million. So that means about $56 million to address all of those needs. Now, fortunately, or I guess it depends on your perspective. It is projected that we're going to gain an additional 7,000 students. So that 7,000 students will bring in an additional $55 to $60 million with no changes to the base student allocation. So I would expect that the Department of Education and the legislature will increase the base student allocation. So we'll see that additional revenue. So that kind of, as of today, I think we're kind of even with the extra revenue from additional students. But that doesn't take into consideration the additional staff we'll need to support those additional 7,000 students. The documents that I sent earlier, I have printouts. I placed them and when we had the previous break, I placed them in front of you. Does everybody have them? If not, I will get you a copy. The first document that we're going to review is the internal audit department request to change a position this current fiscal year. It should have been the very first document on top. If everyone's ready, I will proceed. So currently, Mrs. Matthews has entered drop. So she will be setting off into a new time in her life here soon. And we really need to address succession planning to prepare. This is a very unique position that she's in. Each school district or most school districts have one, and that job requires a CPA or a certified internal auditor. And current market prices for a CPA right out of college is probably about $150,000. So the current salary for the senior manager, and Ms. Matthews has posted this job a few times and she hasn't found a successful candidate. So what we're requesting to do is to raise that position from a senior coordinator, senior manager to an assistant director, which we introduced last year. It was the first time we introduced this new position as an assistant director. The salary difference is about $10,000. But I believe that it would help Ms. Matthews get somebody in place pretty quickly. So their request would be to change the job description, which was attached, which would result in a, dependent on the experience. And let me publicly say, when you see the dollar amounts for the salary, that is not set in stone from the standpoint of it depends on the experience that someone brings in. We typically, in the reorganization, will, on the professional technical side, project that the person's going to come in and be on level 4. That's just for budgetary purposes. So when you approve these sort of things, it's not, we're guessing because we don't know what the candidate that comes in, what their experience is going to be. But that has been a question over the years on how we come up with those salary expectations. So this request will come back to you at the board meeting on March 28th. And if there's any questions, I can try to answer, or Ms. Matthews will be glad to come up and answer.
Thank you. I just want to say I wholeheartedly support this. I've been on the Audit and Finance Committee for many years, and I have seen that department circle through many different folks through the years, and you can never fault anyone for trying to better themselves. So I understand that. But with the new information provided, and I thought she did a great, or you did, whoever wrote it up, did a great job providing that to us. And after reviewing that, I mean, we need to get somebody in there. You really can't have someone in a position for a year and then ask them to turn around and take over. That's a several-year process for those of us that are in business. I mean, it takes time to get somebody into all the different pieces. So I think this is an investment in our future for that department, keeping in mind that, you know, our department, internal audit department, audits all of our schools every single year. And that's quite a lengthy task that they do, but it's because we as a board have asked of that to try to keep, you know, our fiduciary responsibility up to snuff. So I just thank you for presenting this. Thank you for bringing it up. I know we've talked about it many times through the years that we need to do some of these things, and I think we put our money where our mouth was when we took care of Miss Matthews to start with, and now I think that, you know, associate director, I can't remember what the name is, but assistant director, it is high time we do that. So I appreciate y'all bringing that forward so that we can properly prepare for the future and have time to get someone trained in all the little pieces and the nuances of that job. So thank you so much.
I also had Chair Wyatt.
Thank you. And I just wanted to echo a little bit of what Ms. Cunningham said. A big piece of this is succession planning, but also making sure that we can compete with the market at large. We know that as a school district, we are probably never going to be able to truly compete with a Publix or Saddle Creek or some of those larger companies, but we do offer other great benefits like our healthcare and things like that. But even just the title change from the wealth of knowledge I've learned about internal auditing, a senior coordinator is not typically an internal auditor role that you'll hear literally anywhere else. So just making sure that we're able to get this filled so that we do have time to train someone and hopefully have a succession plan for Ms. Matthews is crucial. So thank you, Jason.
Sure.
No further questions or comments, Mr. Pitts?
I would like to say those other organizations do not have Mr. Hyde.
And they won't.
We're blessed.
So the next packet should, near the top, say request for learning support to modify the current district plan for fiscal year 23. It's a good 39 pages if you want to count the pages. And Ms. Castles, this is her first time. I think this is her first time. I promised that everyone would have great questions and be nice, and so she shouldn't be as nervous as she is. But she has put together a presentation to walk you through the documents that you have, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Castles.
Thank you. Hi, good afternoon, Madam Chair, honorable board members, and Superintendent Hyde. This presentation includes requests to address the reorganization of the Learning Support Division that includes behavior, mental health, exceptional student education, and student services. I would like to first begin by thanking my team. We have worked collaboratively for months now to address the needs across the division in an effort to make sure we develop a plan that we believe will benefit students. Okay, so I'll start with the 22-23 reorganization request, and I'll start with the Behavior Mental Health Department. I think you have ESC first, so if you could, sorry about that. So if you could go to the ESC, I think it's like the 4th or 5th page. We'll go back to Behavior Mental Health. So in the Behavior Mental Health Department, I think Mr. Hyde has spoken about this quite often, about the board certified assistant behavior analyst. It's been really hard to find board certified behavior analysts, which we also call BCBAs. And so in an effort to make sure that we can provide support to students, we are asking for that particular position to be changed into a board certified assistant behavior analyst. And because of the cost difference, we would be able to employ 3 versus 1. A coordinator of mental health services and a coordinator of behavior support. Those positions actually already exist. It's just a change in the job description as outlined in your documents as well. give you a second to go back to exceptional student education. So the reorg request for this school year for exceptional student education department, the request would be to add 3 local assistive technology specialists. At the current time, we have 2 in the district, and to add 3 more would allow us to have 1 per region. We're a very large district with a lot of needs. And local assistive technology specialists allow students to have access, and it would increase access to instruction. It would increase opportunities for more inclusive practices as well. We also have found that it's important for us to be able to create additional evaluation teams that can work through the summer to make sure that we can provide services to all of our students who are in need and our young students. So we are requesting 7 pre-K educational diagnosticians, 6 speech and language pathologists, and on the student services side, we'll also be asking for a pre-K psychologist. And those teams will allow us to have, again, 1 per division, 1 per region, and then it would also allow us to have 2 bilingual teams as well. Yes, sir?
If you'll hold a moment. I'd rather give time to have some of the questions addressed.
Oh, sorry.
In your slides.
Yeah.
So, Ms. Miller.
I just want to talk back to the behavior analyst. So for years, we didn't have behavior analysts or techs in this district, and we contracted out. I think we need to talk about the need, and this is going to help support the need. BCBAs, and if you don't live in disability world, BCBA and AB, they're very expensive services, and I think I think this is a better way to look at it because we can train staff without having to have those direct hires, which it seems like we couldn't fill anyway. And also, if we're not contracting out, we have our own staff that goes around and trains. I just think it's better services to our teachers and school staff. The LAT evaluation, the local assistant technology, that for people who don't know, that's for students who need assistive devices for speech. And we've always had a hard time getting LAT evals in a timely manner only because of staff. So I think having them per region will be helpful and maybe cut down the timelines of having those LAT evaluations and getting supports to students faster. Are those coming, how many do we have, we're adding these, but how many do we have total when you add these?
Right now we have 2. If we added 3, we'd have 5.
So they would be pretty much in each region? Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay. Okay. Okay, the ESE pre-K teacher, we would need a ESE pre-K teacher to make sure that we're providing services to students. We have had an increase in the number of students, and we're also we're working with Dr. Lori Allen to try to increase our opportunities for inclusive practices for our pre-K students. So we want to make sure that we have staff that will be able to provide support as we continue to work collaboratively with that department as well. A parent liaison would be a position to ensure that we are able to contact parents, and there are a lot of concerns that are coming our way, and we want to make sure that we are providing excellent customer service and contacting parents and making sure that they feel heard so that we can make sure we provide support in any way possible as we move forward. The next 2 positions are a director of compliance and an assistant director of compliance. And these 2 positions would allow us to be able to address the due process cases and the state complaints that are coming our way, along with making sure that we're streamlining some trainings in order to make sure that we provide support and we're able to be proactive as we move forward. In the Student Services Department, the clerk specialist basically is just a position that has been moved from an office specialist, and the warehouse worker is a part of the tassel department, and that's a department that's in the student services. And then, just as I mentioned earlier about pre-K psychologist, that will be a part of the evaluation team, and we hope to be able to make sure that we increase our opportunity to have bilingual teams as well. Senior Coordinator 504 is a request because 7% of our student population have 504s, and the difference between an individual education plan for an exceptional student and a 504 is that a 504, the student is provided accommodations, and there's not a need for specially designed instruction.
There's no questions at the time.
Sir?
There's nothing else.
Okay, so moving forward, as we move to, so that was 22 and the 22-23 request, and we're going to go ahead and move forward to the 23-24 regional teams. We are planning to move into a place in the learning division to make sure that we are providing supports per region. So the way that it's set up now, if you look at behavior mental health services, this is a senior manager of behavior. There would be one per region. The BCABA or the BCBA, what we just spoke of, which is a board certified behavior analyst, there would be one per region. Academic behavior support teachers, there would be 4 per region. And then high school would have 2. And then behavior support technicians, there would be 2 per region. And mental health facilitators, there would be 8 per region. And this would allow what Ms. Miller was speaking about, is to build capacity with staff, with school-based staff, in order to support students. The regional team would also make up 1 ESE area senior manager, an ESE district coach, which is already in place. And the staffing specialist, the recommendation would be for the staffing specialist to become program compliance specialist. There would be 4 per region. And then local assistive technology specialist we spoke of earlier, there would be 1 per region.
So to be clear, you heard a request for additional positions. Now you're seeing the allocation, how she's going to assign them for a subsequent year. So I don't want there to be a question as to whether or not what Ms. Castles is saying here is she wants to add another 4 program compliance specialists. She's already done that. And now she's just basically summarizing what the 23-24 org chart will look like in her department.
Yes, sir. The staffing specialist role will change a bit to provide support to students, to provide the school-based teams to actually provide another layer. Right now, senior managers cover around 24 schools, on average. And so these 4, the program compliance specialists would be another layer to be able to provide additional support and break up the number of schools. So each one of them would have 6 to support. And then we'll work through the LEAs to do some of the eligibility meetings that are currently being done by staffing specialists. Student services, there'll be a range of social workers, 8 to 12 social workers, and in the high school there will be 8. 7 psychologists in each region, 1 LPN, 3 to 4 school nurses, 2 health department nurses, and then we also have ESE nurses based on student need.
Pause for a moment, Ms. Castles. Ms. Cunningham?
Financial piece, which I know we haven't got to yet, at the back of each packet, but I printed it out ahead of time. I'm trying to understand the titles. This first one that we're talking about, you call it, or somebody wrote, mid-year staffing plan. That's 22-23. When are you wanting to implement that?
She would like to make those enhancements occur now,
Like,
going into the final quarter before the end of the school year.
okay, so that's what this amount is?
Yes, ma'am.
But is any of the asks on this related to the staffing plan for 23-24 financially? Yes, because I understand you're taking on that new
Correct.
position, so it has to roll to the next school year.
Correct.
But,
And then Jason, in the second phase,
yes,
how many new positions and costs are associated with the second phase?
That's correct. Let me explain the documents that you have in front of you.
okay,
All right, the first spreadsheet that was attached to the 22-23.
yes,
There's 2 amounts listed there, one for
Right.
the yearly,
yes,
but since we're only got 3 months left, then you'll see that the total ask for both Ms. Matthews' position and the positions that Ms. Castles is presenting
yes.
is a total of $512,000. That's a yearly cost. That's not what it's going to cost this year.
Right,
But if you look at the next spreadsheet that's
Yes.
attached to the 23-24,
yes. It shows that 1/3. Is that from this year? That's what I'm trying to figure.
Yeah, so what you're seeing there is because whatever we add this year is going to add.
Of course, to next year.
Yeah, and so it's an addition to our adopted budget.
Yes.
So you'll see a total down there for staffing changes for 23-24, general fund $6,257,921, and a reduction in grant funding from $3,178,256 for a total of $3 million.
Yes.
Now, it was important that we make these, some of this was how positions are funded. Depending how positions are funding in the learning support area determines whether we can get Medicaid reimbursement. So although we'll see an increase of the general fund, we're currently bringing in about $4 million in Medicaid reimbursement. Looking at other districts, it's estimated that we're bringing in about 30%, 30 to 40% of what we could receive in Medicaid funding.
And part of that, as Mr. Pitts pointed out, I just want to clarify this. Certain positions, if funded from federal funding sources, cannot seek reimbursement for services provided to students. So what we did was, under Mr. Pitts and my direction, we directed Ms. Castles, move them all into the general fund, and then we'll have enough money through IDEA and through other areas later, but let's go ahead and get them on a better track, a mechanism for reimbursements. Because again, as Mr. Pitts just pointed out, and I've had external people look at our numbers and projected that we were that low, that we are only getting about 25 to 30% of what we should be able to bill for each year.
So when you look at the 22-23, the 512,000, that would be impacting us here for the next few months if those positions are all able to be filled, correct?
Prorated.
Prorated, but that does not flow. This will, for the 23-24, those positions are included, but for an entire year.
Correct.
Okay, that was my question.
That's correct, Mr. Pitts.
Yes, and it's actually a little overstated.
Okay, it's okay. I get the gist. Just trying to follow it along. Thank you, sir.
And also, I just learned this recently, that it also, our contract, how we fund our contracts with outside providers, depending on if we use general fund or like IDA funding, impacts whether we can bill for reimbursement also. And so we'll be making some changes to our contracts. We're going to be reducing our contracts, hopefully, with getting these staff. So you're going to also see an offset. It's not provided here, but we'll see an offset by those contracts. What's going to happen is you're going to be asked at the next meeting to approve the 22-23 positions for both Ms. Matthews and Mrs. Castles. We will not ask you to approve the reorganization plan for 23-24 until later in the year, since we still don't know what our budget's going to look like.
I understand.
And for the other departments that are not presenting today, it doesn't mean that there's not reorg coming. It's just that we're trying to break this down into smaller workshops, so it's a little easier to understand what's going on in the departments. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a good question.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so back to the Learning Support regional teams, the student services. So there will be 8 to 12 social workers per region, and then 8 social workers at the high school level as well. And going back to the Medicaid, the Medicaid reimbursement, Mr. Hyde and I have had plenty of conversations about how this might look. And here in our district, we provide mental health services, but we can also provide counseling as a related service. So moving forward, there was an increase or a request for an increase in 10 social workers to begin implementing the counseling as a related services outlined on an IEP, so that we can make sure that we can be reimbursed for that service as well. It's not something that we currently do, but it's something that we want to move forward in doing, but decided to do it on a small scale instead of district-wide for this coming school year. 7 psychologists per region, and I think I already went over the other part for the nurses. And then when you think about the regional support teams, there will be regionals, when you think about the regionals, there will be some work that will be done collaboratively per region. And then we also will need district staff, and this staff already exists, except with the exception of the 2 staffing specialists. And what we will do is utilize this staff to make sure that we're being consistent across the district. So there will be collaboration within the region, and then there will also be consistent and streamlined trainings across the district to make sure that we're consistent. So this is the reorganization request and the recommendations for 23-24, which is the following year. 6 mental health facilitators, 7 additional academic behavior support teachers, and 15 behavior support technicians. And that was what, also again, what Ms. Miller was discussing about the additional behavior supports next school year.
Ms. Castles, hold one moment. Ms. Miller?
I just thought of something that will be asked. These are all funded under support services. So when we talk about additional behavior supports, this does not have to go to students with disabilities. Like, what if you have students, we have a behavior problem, especially in middle schools. Everybody's nodding. I get phone calls almost daily. So this will increase behavior supports to students, not only with disabilities, but students who do not have disabilities but have concerned behavior.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to verify that.
And again, it comes back to funding, and we've been creative with that. It's with split funding. Normally, whenever IDA funds pay, then yes, you're going to address that. Those needs are going to be addressed by by the staff that's supporting students with disabilities who are paid out of IDA. But we're being creative in that, making sure that we can address the needs of all students.
And the additional support of social workers, how many do we currently have? How many of this will be in addition? Is it different because we don't do it regionally and we're not going to do it regionally? Like, you're saying there's going to be 8 at a high school?
Mm-hmm.
We don't currently have 8 at a high school, do we? Sorry.
That's okay. I just want to make sure we get it right.
And do we have a resource for social workers? Like, this sounds like a big hire. I just don't know if they're hard I don't know if they're hard to find.
Thank you, Ms. Miller, for the question.
Sorry.
It is an excellent question. We currently have 35 social workers.
For the district.
For the district. We are not currently assigned in a regional model, so that will be a switch for us next school year. So with the addition of 10, we would hope to have 45 for the district. We do see potentially some variation between regions based on need, so that's why we gave you the range of 8 to 12 social workers per region, with 8 at the high school level, to make sure that we can accommodate that need, as well as the pilot project that Ms. Castles referenced for counseling as a related service.
Thank you. And we'll be able to bill Medicaid for the counseling as a related service?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was Ms. Sherry Scott, the Director of Student Services. Thank you.
Dr. Allen?
So, I guess going off of what Ms. Miller was drawing attention to as it relates to our some of our behavior issues, is there, maybe some larger behavioral initiative plan as we, look to branch out and build infrastructure around this? And I don't know if that's something that we can have access to.
Yes, sir. We're working towards that. That's one of the many priorities that we're trying to address. We already have some procedures in place as how we provide support in the area of behavior mental health, because when principals feel like they've done everything that they can, then they reach out to us to see how we can provide support for particular students. And so we're looking to revamp that, though, and it might look a little bit different when we start working in regions, because we'll be more collaborative, and of course we're better together. But we are, the expectation with the increased personnel, if we can fill the positions, is to really make an effort to build capacity and provide some consistent professional learning for teachers.
No further questions?
Okay. In an effort to be consistent across the district as well and equitable, there was an expectation to look at the LEAs. We will be requesting that they be called ESE facilitators. Once we looked at the number across the district, we were able to decrease the number by 9. So there, just to give you an example, there was a high school that has, well, currently there is a high school with 320 ESE students, and then we currently have some elementary schools where there are only 100 ESE students, and there's one full-time LEA at each one of those schools. So in an effort to be more equitable across the district, we have a plan that we're going to put in place in order to make sure we're providing support across the district, but in a more equitable manner. And then the other request is 2 additional staffing specialists. So again, we can make sure that we are providing that streamlined, consistent information across the district when we train. And Student Services Department, just basically because of an increase in number of students requesting additional licensed practical nurses, LPNs. And then the school social workers are the 10 that we just discussed as far as the counseling as a related service. And then we're also requesting a senior manager of health services. And that is, again, in an effort to build Medicaid within our department to make sure that we're able to address the needs of students who have medical needs within our schools. So thank you for your time today, and the goal is to ensure that we work collaboratively as a division to provide consistent support to school-based teams in an effort to serve students and families with fidelity. So I appreciate your time today, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Board members, you may recall last summer when we brought forward several comprehensive reforms for several departments, this was a department we held off on. Her predecessor was transitioning out. We wanted to provide Ms. Castles with plenty of opportunity to meet with her team, get a sense of what the needs are in the community, and she's done an excellent job of going out and listening. I know Ms. Miller keeps her readily informed as well as to other larger issues, and let's be honest, Ms. Miller is very well informed by her parents about what the concerns are and by staff as well. And so I think Ms. Castles has done, and the team have done a great job in their performing their due diligence to come back with one comprehensive plan that will best address the needs of our students moving forward, but does so economically, and it's a financially sustainable plan. In fact, it will result in additional revenue generation for the school district, and we'll be sure to report that out each year so that you can see how we're offsetting the cost of these additional positions each year.
I would like to add one more thing. I just want to make sure that all of the staff in the department understand that there will be no displacements based on the current numbers. I know that's always a concern, so I wanted to make sure that that's clear. Even though roles and responsibilities may look different, there's no one that will be displaced as far as this goes moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Miller.
I have one more question, since I have 4 questions.
Yes.
I appreciate that we've met already and reviewed this plan. And everybody has their own soapbox. This just happens to be mine. My question is, I don't know if you can address, with the new voucher bill that's coming, we are going to have a substantial number of students that with support services going into private schools, in my opinion, and that's growing every year, as well as our charters. Can you talk about how that will work, how we're going to support they're all of our students, and if you don't know, our IDA budget does pay for therapy for students in those settings, and we're also in charge of making sure their IEP turns into support plans. Are we going to have to, this is a Hyde question, are we going to have to start charging for those administrative services? But how are we going to help support that as that number most likely will grow?
So that was a lot of questions.
Sorry. Charter private, how are we supporting charter private?
Yes, I got it.
Okay.
So basically moving forward, when we look at the program specialists for next school year, and we look at the support that we have in place, and we're trying to layer that support. If you notice on the org chart, there are we tried to do away with specific like ESE senior managers, and the reason for that is because making sure even with our teacher resource trainers, we want to make sure that we are able to make decisions and not continue to bring job descriptions back to you all and make decisions based on the need. So with that being said, if there's a high need for charter private, then we have a certain number of people who are addressing the needs within each region, and we will be working on that to make sure that we use data to make those decisions.
Thank you.
No further questions?
Okay, thank you.
That was wonderful, Ms. Castles. That was quite a lot of reorg going on there. What I need from you guys being the board members, sorry to call you that, is how you would like to see this information presented. It's as we go forward with the reorg. We typically give you a lot of paperwork and just think about what you'd like to see as we go through the next few work sessions. Just a little preview at the next work session. We'll talk about facilities budget. We didn't get there a few meetings ago. And I know one of the reorgs that we're going to present besides facilities will be at the next work session is also the IT department. So if there's no other questions, thank you.
Mr. Sharpless.
Sorry, I had to step out for a second. One thing I would like to know, just overall, how many positions, like, because there's a lot of stuff to go through, just like a summary sheet, how many positions total that we're adding, and then what is the dollar amount to that versus how many that we're potentially reorganizing, just so we can have instead of having to go through multiple different documents, I just want to know the financial impact and then also the staffing impact.
Okay, so that's a great suggestion. I did provide a spreadsheet that shows that.
Yes.
That spreadsheet's been the one that we've been using for quite a few years. So I will give you a summary.
Yes, a PDF or something.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'll do that at the next.
Thank you. I mean, I can read through it all, but I would just like to be able to reference.
No, it's a lot of paperwork. So, yes, sir, I will provide that for you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair. That concludes Superintendent's report and budget and staffing, and I will turn the rest of the workshop over to you.
Thank you, Superintendent Hyde. So we have a few information items. Any questions on donation report, Head Start report, financial analyses? I'm not seeing anyone on the speaker list. So we will go to our board meeting agenda review for this evening. All right. Any questions on sections A or B? All right. Sections D go to F through I. Sections K through L. Was that a question or a gasp? Okay. With the humming and the gasping, I just feel like I'm missing something. Sections O through P. Dr. Allen.
Thank you. I guess in P1, obviously there's, I don't know if anybody else has received emails and concerns. I am a huge fan and proponent and user of Qualtrics in regards to my personal research that I'm doing. But obviously other larger questions have come up in regards to that software. And I do appreciate the non-disclosure that's there, and I think I had referenced that earlier in our conversation. And just I wanted to know, as we implement that software, how many end users are within the contract? First of all, and
probably more appropriate to pull the item and move it for discussion rather than consent than to have the discussion here in workshop.
Yeah.
We can pull it and move it to the
be
action
fine.
agenda, but can we also have someone
But we were
speak to
prepared
that?
for that. It's just not,
Okay.
I don't
Okay,
think
perfect.
that's protocol to do it here in the workshop.
Okay.
It would be appropriate for the request to be to move it to action, for there to be discussion during the board agenda.
That's great. And I'll just request to move it
Okay.
to an action item. Thank
Would
you.
But
you-
yes, we are fully prepared to address any questions or concerns.
Okay, because we do often ask questions I just want to make sure you get your answers before the board meeting if you have questions. So if somebody's here that could address his questions before, I would,
I'm struggling with protocol.
Mm-hmm.
The board agenda was submitted, it's on consent. A board member at this point, as we're talking through the agenda,
Mm-hmm.
would typically request for an item to be moved from consent to action to allow discussion. It's on consent right now. Are you trying?
he just has questions on the item, that if we
Correct.
can get those questions answered, it may very well be able to stay on consent.
But I have a feeling that Dr. Allen wants it on the record, because he's referencing, and Dr. Allen, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're saying that you're getting emails and there are concerns, and I'm sure the whole board has received some of the same emails I received, we are prepared to address that issue at length this evening, but it would be more appropriate to do so during the board meeting. But if you're not asking for it to be discussed publicly, then I can absolutely provide information to you during the break. I can provide it for the whole board, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I was
just trying to
thinking
clarify
a
what-
narrative, just a couple, simple questions in regards to the software. But I mean, let's go ahead and pull it and put it on the action agenda item. I'm fine with that to create more narrative around it.
Better transparency.
Yeah, agreed.
All righty. So if Miss Wendy and Yvette, all right, that will be pulled and on the action agenda. Any other questions on O or P? All right. Any questions on Q, action agenda? The Polk County half-cent sales tax oversight committee, I believe that is your nominee, Justin. If you would like to, after we get a motion in a second, if you would like to read their bio or tell us a little bit about them during discussion, that's typically what we do. So feel free to share a little bit about them during discussion. I just didn't want to put you on the spot, like, when it happens.
No problem.
Any other questions on Q? All right. Mr. Nolte?
On Q, on number 4, that library book purchase, I'm still hearing, I'm getting a lot of phone calls about it. But
Okay. So it's on the action agenda, so unless there's at least 4 board members that indicate they'd like to remove it from the agenda, then it will stay on the agenda. Sorry, Q4, Superintendent Hyde, library books. So unless there's consensus at the meeting to remove something from the agenda,
didn't we originally opt that out, and then we changed it to opt in for those books?
this is purchasing books for all of our schools
okay.
next year.
Okay.
And there's time for discussion at the vote, but not in the work session.
Ms. Miller, your mic's not on. Okay, your mic's on now. Yes, there's time for discussion.
Time for discussion with votes, but now that it's an action agenda item on a work session, it would have to be polled if that was the interest of a board member.
Of the majority of the
majority of the board.
Because it's already an action item. Any other questions on Q? All right, seeing none. Superintendent Hyde, you have a report. Mr. Bridges, it appears you also have a report.
Yes, ma'am. The first item I will bring to you, the second item we have received a voluminous package on that I will want to review with the Chief of Staff and Superintendent before we bring it, so I will bring that to you at the March meeting.
Okay, so T2 will be pulled.
I'll bring you the first one, but not the second.
Okay, and that will be removed from the agenda before tonight? Miss Yvette, T2? Yes, please. Yes, please. It'll go to the March meeting. And then auditor report. Ms. Matthews, you have a report. All right. All right, and then board member reports, public comment. Any other questions on tonight's meeting? Seeing none. To the right window. Any updates from committees that you're liaisons to, or questions, concerns, good of the orders that you would like to discuss at the end of this work session? There's none? Nobody has anything?
I have one.
Ms. Miller, request to speak. Did you request to speak? No. Okay, go.
I had my first meeting with Head Start, which I thought was really great and informative. Our population is growing that needs those services, and that team is working to meet the needs of students. And Head Start is different than pre-K. It's confusing if you don't live in that world as well. But I did hear from our Hearth program director that we are now hovering at 4,000 students who are considered homeless in this district. So for people that are looking for something to get behind and help support, I think the Hearth program is one that would be in need because the level of support that's needed for that many students.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Any other questions, concerns? Good of the orders? All right, well, with no further business to come before this board, we are adjourned. We will be back at 4 o'clock for discipline.
Yes, ma'am.
So we will need to clear the room between now and 4 p.m.